Good evening, Holliston, and welcome to the October 5th, 2023 meeting of the Holliston School Committee. We'll call the meeting to order. We're meeting in regular session. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda with some warrants and the minutes from last meeting. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes, or are we good to approve the consent agenda? Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Amanda. Do you, Minnie?
Yeah, I have to abstain because I wasn't there last week.
Okay.
Why is the camera not picking up?
So all in favor say aye.
Aye. Abstain.
Abstain, so it's 401. Perfect. Moving on to our report from our student representatives. Hello.
Yeah, so once again, thanks for having us here. We wanted to start off by talking about the MIAA power rankings, since those have recently come out. So football is currently ranked number 2, which is really exciting, and girls volleyball is ranked number 7th, and on the top of the football, so there's kind of
Yes, the homecoming was 2 Fridays ago. Our theme was Hawaiian, and it was very successful. I think everybody had a really great time, and I have no issues regarding that. And then last Thursday, we had parent open house. Teachers, I think, really enjoyed that. NHS seniors served as tour guides, and the NHS had a bake sale and raised almost $280.
And then on the top of the Student Advisory Council, for this day is October 17th. And we have our first panelist first as of today. So we're really excited to have Representative James Arena de Rosa joining us for Civics Day this year. We also have our beloved AP government teacher, Mr. Rooney. Mrs. Susan Nichols from the Senate President's Office, that's the district liaison. Ted Dooley, who's a Holliston High School alumni, and Elizabeth Greendale, the town clerk. And so we plan on having a panel for the senior class, having a voter registration drive, and having our senior class engage in issues of politics and civic engagement as we prepare to step out into the world.
What day is that again?
Tuesday, October 17th, the morning of. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda is school committee individual comment, and we will start with Sarah. No? Yes? Any good?
I just want to quickly say thanks to the faculty, staff, and everyone else at Ramsden High School for both open houses that I was able to attend the last few weeks. They're all great. I really enjoyed getting to meet my kids' teachers. The real heroes of the high school open house, of course, were the National Honor Society kids that helped everyone find their way around when we were all lost. So thank you, everyone who made that happen. That's it.
Okay, Lisa.
Thank you for open house as well. I only got lost twice, I was going to say. I know it's like my 6th year coming to the school, but I only got lost twice, so I'm feeling that's a success. And I really appreciate all the teachers that were there. That was awesome. I went to the townwide, not to steal any of Sarah's thunder, but I did go to townwide PTO. Last night they had this new handy-dandy flyer brochure about the things that they do for the community, and one of the things I just wanted to call attention to the staff and teachers is that they have a form online for them to submit for materials and things that they might need for their classroom that's open to all teachers, all staff members, regardless of what school you're at. It's not just for elementary school, high school as well. So they just wanted me to call attention to that at the meeting last night, so I said I would do that. And that's all I have for this evening. Thanks.
Okay, so just for me, just as a reminder to everyone, town meeting is October 16th. It's in the Holliston High School auditorium, 7 o'clock. I believe there's babysitting again available for those who need it, at least in the first few hours. It promises to be a very riveting town meeting. No, but it is our fall capital meeting. The schools have one request for Chromebooks for 5th and 8th grade. It's sort of our normal request. So we hope everyone can come out and show their support for the schools in that way. The only other thing we'll talk about later on in the meeting is just that we'll be holding a forum with the school committee and the sort of the staff, educators and staff on October 12th Second, we have a publicly posted meeting, but it's intended for just for teachers and staff, and that's in the Upper Town Hall. And we'll be sending out an email tomorrow as for official invite to the staff that way. Anything else? All right. Do we have any public comment? No one sent me an email, and I don't see anyone here, so I think we don't have any public comment, so we'll move forward. Next, we have presentations, and are we sure Jess is first?
Sure, Al. Let me go first? All right. So just screen share.
So I just got a text from someone that we need to unmute the Zoom on that computer.
Okay, unmute.
Okay.
Nope, on the bottom left.
Kind of echo.
Hang on.
I think you can mute yours, just so they can
It's me.
yeah, we're getting kicked back.
You guys got to turn your sound all the way up. Okay. All right.
There's. Can you hear us at home? No echo? Okay.
All right.
It's a rocky way to start. So I am Jess Beatty, Director of Student Services, and tonight I just want to give you an update of our work ahead. For those of you that don't know, I'm going into my second year in this role, and very excited at the work that our team has already started to do from the summer up until now. So I always like to make everything student-centered, those of you that know me, and we're starting to work on presenting at each IEP meeting as well, the student's picture to not allow us to forget who we're really talking about. I think sometimes we're always in this to do what's best for kids, but sometimes we lose sight. And so I like to just show what we're doing, and we're off to a great start here. These are just a few pictures from events that have occurred already at the first start of the year, some activities at the middle school. Our unified basketball has started, and just it's been a good start so far. I like to just sort of ground us in the work that we do and give you the trajectory of where we've been with our student population. So I tried to capture what our data looked like last year just to give some perspective. We definitely often talk about the challenges that students are facing now, but sometimes we fall trapped to everyone is having a hard time and everyone is struggling. And so this data just sort of captures where we're at with things, and certainly there has been an increase in certain areas, but I think it's expected increase as we fall out of this COVID. I hate to bring us back to COVID, but certainly we do need to keep that in our mind as far as the data that we have and the kids that we're working with, and just sort of track, are we getting better or are we still struggling? And so you'll see a small uptick in our numbers for IEP and a small downward trend in our 504s. And so looking at some of our data, we can equate that to some students are coming off of 504s and going on to IEPs. We've also had some move-ins as well that are IEPs inherited from other districts. Our English language learner population has grown just a little bit, so we're at 77 last year into 81 this year currently. And our out-of-district numbers, which we projected last year, we were going to see a little bit of an uptick. We certainly have had that. So we were at 42 last year, and this year we are currently at 48 kids out of district so far. When I speak with our SSAs and our special ed liaisons, we talk often about what does our journey look like and what do we really want for our students. And I think you can equivocally hear from everyone, we're really looking at just an open and honest way to communicate with families and staff, to learn more about what it is that our students need, and really working with community stakeholders at bringing in resources to best help us. And I know Jeriel will talk a little bit about how we're growing that in the area of mental health, and utilizing outside community stakeholders to help us with that. But also within special ed services, we do a lot of work with outside agencies such as Perkins and Landmark to continue to grow our own practices, but also help students that are currently in the district needing those supports where we may not have those positions. I always like to bring us back to what we have been doing. Sometimes it's often hard when we're in the thick of things to really look at the progress we've made. So I will always paint this picture for you to show you the growth that we are making. I think we've made incredible progress over the past year in beginning to align the work across the district. I think when I jumped into this role, one of the things that I noticed and heard from lots of people was that we need to align our processes and procedures so that not only our staff know what to expect for a student's journey, but families also know what to expect. And so we don't expect that pre-K is the exact replica of what you would do at the high school, but you should be able to anticipate some similarities in how things are done. The processes are pretty similar, and the services that we provide are very similar. What we also are really trying to aim for is to create, especially from COVID, is to promote and create more independent learners. And what we have found is that because of the gap, the academic gap, I think we've become accustomed to worrying about allowing students to fall and make mistakes. And so what we're looking at is this assistance support determination. And what I mean by that is when we're providing para support, when we're providing supports in inclusion settings, making sure that we're providing the right amount of supports. So not assuming a kid can't, but looking at what a kid can do, and allotting the right amount of support for them to find their own success. So we've looked a lot, and we will continue to as part of the SSAs and my student learning goal. It's really going to be around what types of para support and how much para support are we giving to kids. And we have created a criteria around that, which families will begin to hear and see at IEP meetings. So it gives people the data that parents are looking for. So when we say, no, your child doesn't need a one-to-one, why is it? And giving them that specific data. We've also launched special programs this year that I'll talk a little bit more about in a few slides. We're working really on a more robust way of communicating about student services. So we have launched the Family Resource Guide that we've made with CPAC. Last night we held our first Family Ed series around understanding your child's IEP. And we have 7 more that we will launch throughout the year around guardianship, around what is a 504, around behavior and regulating behaviors, around our investigation processes in school. All of these will be recorded and on Zoom, so families, can attend, but if they can't, they will be recorded and posted on our webpage. And you'll continue to hear us talk a lot about the revamping of continuums, which I think lends itself to decreasing our out-of-district numbers once we create and solidify those strong structured continuums to help kids stay in their district where they can and provide them those supports. This is just sort of something that we talk a lot about as an admin team, but also with our special ed staff, is really making sure that everything we do is through the lens of inclusion and equity. And I often talk to our staff a lot about, yes, we want it to be an inclusive setting, but what does that exactly mean? And making sure we're focusing on meeting the child where they're at, because oftentimes we feel like if we just include them in the general ed setting, that means we're an inclusive district. And oftentimes what we find is we haven't allowed that child the opportunity to be ready for that type of environment. So just because we're including them in general ed settings doesn't mean setting that we're providing effective inclusion. So really making them think about inclusion as being a feeling versus a place. So does that child feel when they're in a gen ed setting that they are included in that? I don't want to ever walk into a classroom and just see a child sitting there at a desk, and that means they're included, right? So making sure that we are differentiating and providing opportunities for them to access that curriculum at a level that they can. My special programs update, we're really excited that we've launched this program. I have to remind everybody at home and in our schools that we're still in that infancy stage. So as much as we would like to feel that when you launch a brand new program, it's going to be perfect and quick and easy, it isn't. And so we've hit a few bumps, but I feel like we are working really hard to train our staff. We've provided a lot of after-school training hours. We've provided in-school training. Professional development around that. And essentially for people at home, what special programs is our platform that replaces what we used to have as ESPED. It houses all IEPs, 504s, English language learner documents, and healthcare plans. Our hope is, and what we know to be true, is that this is a more effective and efficient way to keep student information confidential. And keep us in compliance so far as really monitoring our timelines and keeping things in order. We have also purchased the DocuSign feature, which you heard me talk a little bit about last year, which we have already started using, and it is so much better. So our ability to be able to send a consent out or the IEP out to a family and get that signature back in rapid time directly back into that child's portal is really great. We will be working with families in the upcoming months to introduce the parent portal side of that. So right now, anything that is being sent out, you're receiving in your email that you've provided to the school. What the hope is with that parent portal, you will get your Power School access similar to how you at the middle school and high school can check attendance and grades of that nature. You'll be able to flip into the special program side and be able to access your child's IEP, their progress reports, and their 504s. Print those as you need them and be able to view them whenever. The other thing that we're really working hard on is training and communicating not only out to our community, but with our staff as well. So I've already talked about our Family Ed series, which is the calendar for that is posted up on our webpage. And I know CPAC is doing an amazing job promoting those for me, so I really appreciate that. We have created, with the help of Victoria Briggs, our BCBA, and Tessa Piantadosi, our SSA from RAMS, and myself, to create 5 modules for paraprofessionals. Initially, we designed these for our brand new paraprofessionals that have been hired this year, which is we've had 21 new paraprofessionals come on board across the district. Those modules are around what is your role as a paraprofessional, so what does that look like? What are the expectations of that role? How do you collect data and what do you do with that? Understanding what disabilities are, what our continuums offer, and how those are addressed, supporting inclusion within the gen ed settings, and prevention and de-escalation of behaviors in the classroom. So those are the essence of those modules. And what we found was everyone kind of wanted those pieces to that pie. So we have shared those out. And so paras are able to access those and review those. They are all recorded and also provided Google Slides for those. We're piloting this year what we're calling our building liaisons. Another area, while we have New Teacher Institute, one of the areas that we saw that we were a little bit struggling in was providing, especially our paraprofessionals, a liaison support in their building because they aren't part of New Teacher Institute. So what we have done is provided a pilot of this where there'll be one building liaison per building, and paraprofessionals will meet with them on an as-needed basis, get tours of the building, learn the most essentials of what they need, get their answers, questions to their answers, or answers to their questions, and just have that go-to person. I will also meet with them periodically, both the liaison and paras, through office hour Zooms so that we can just answer questions and help them acclimate to the district and feel supported. And finally, special programs, which I just went through, so for the sake of time, I won't go through again. And then just to remind you of our work with the Continuum, it is a lot of work, and I really can't thank the Continuum staff enough. So in each building, we have our basis continuum, our network continuum, and our pathways continuum. And we've worked really hard to create an entrance and exit criteria for each of those, and create a methodology to collect data so that things are more aligned in how we create and share data, and that allows us to better understand when a student is ready to transition out or when a student is not, and we will either increase or decrease that level of need. And lastly, I just want to review a few initiatives that we are launching through Student Services, not necessarily brand new, but just things that we are keeping our eye on as SSAs and myself, the SSD, on how we are doing. So re-examining supports, that's what I talked about earlier. So really taking a look at how much support are we providing, are we following criteria, and what's our data to demonstrate not only to families but to our staff that children require that level of support through paraprofessionals and services. We also have a strong push on our literacy and learning. You've heard me talk last year about our Orton-Gillingham initiative, where we have the majority of Placentino and Miller special ed staff trained in Orton-Gillingham. We've stepped it up to provide at least 5 staff at Rams trained in Orton-Gillingham and 2 at the high school. So as we start to see our struggling learners grow, and go through the district, there are some supports there for them as they get in the older age. You're going to hear a lot of talk about the dyslexia guidelines through DESE and how we are beginning to identify that more. We are working really hard as an SSA group to acknowledge that we do need to improve in this area, and recognize and label that on IEPs where it is pertinent to do so. So we will be working with Katie Meinault, who is our attorney, Dr. Nami Turk, and then also our school psychologists, who are wonderful and amazing and have a lot of background in this. So they are going to do the work with us through our testing. How do we identify dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia, and how do we put that on the IEP, but go a step further, and how do we help our special ed teachers provide direct service around that? And then lastly, we will be launching the new state IEP this coming fall 2024. By then, all districts within the state of Massachusetts will be expected to implement that. We're doing lots of training now, sending a group of people to train the trainer through DESE in the upcoming weeks and roll that out. And we will also be partnering with Alan Bloom, who I had in last year to meet with parents around the new IEP. He has developed a really great data collection tool that will help us provide not only families but our staff across the board. How does the data align with that new IEP process? And then lastly, I just provided links to just important docs that we are using as a student service group to hopefully help. These are all on our webpage, and I think very valuable to families. And that is it. Any question? Yes.
One of my questions was about, would it be possible to go back on one slide, the slide that had the initiatives?
Yes.
Perfect. The focus on dyslexia guidelines and identifications, and I know this came up, I think, at the June parent forum as well.
Yes.
Now, this is something that we had to begin implementing this year, right? In July?
I mean, the dyslexia guidelines have been out since 2018.
Okay.
So we have been focusing on it. Being new to this role, what I have learned is we need to do more training to help our staff or our special ed staff recognize that, yes, this is a must-do in public schools, and so we are working on that.
And the guidelines, is it only for identification, or is there specific new guidelines in terms of what interventions we need to use?
Both.
Okay.
Yep.
So what are the specific new what are the new interventions? What's different about it?
Well, I think what families need to know and what we've put out there just this week, I believe, are around the literacy screenings. So we have been using DIBELS as a way to screen our students and catch them early. And so every training that we've been through is really focusing on catching them as early as we can. So it used to be identified by grade 3, and now really studies and those guidelines are showing we need to identify kindergarten and first grade in order to really make gains and success in that area. So we are doing that. We're providing OG as a tier 1 level of intervention in Placentino and Miller. And then we're also able to provide reading tutoring where kids are hitting that red level in the DIBELS, which parents will see as we continue to provide information that goes home about these scores, is capturing that, providing that tutoring, and then looking to see where is the growth. Are they making growth in that area? And if not, what more can we do so far as academic support?
Okay, and those screenings happen at least twice a year.
At
and
least
then
twice.
Yep. Are all parents informed on the results of that screening, or only if you're in the red?
Yeah. So we're starting to provide that initial information to all families. Mm-hmm. What we would like to do, and what I think is best practice, is any child falling in the red or that at-risk area will get a phone call prior to that letter going home. We feel, just as a district, that personal connection with a family prior to them getting that in the mail is best. And then what we will do is continue to screen, and parents will be kept apprised if their child is falling in that at risk of any growth or regression.
And I know you said for the intervention we're utilizing Orton Gillingham. Are we only utilizing OG?
So we're not. So it's a multi-sensory approach. So we are using pieces of Orton Gillingham and Wilson. You'll hear a lot that we're still implementing Wilson, and we still have Wilson reading tutors. So dependent upon where the child is at, we determine which course is better for them. Studies and research show that grade 2 and above is where we begin Wilson. So we typically don't start Wilson reading earlier than grade 2. But what we're doing in this district is providing at the start of kindergarten through first grade, and then some will continue in OG. So it's sort of that mix. And many, many districts around here are using mixes of that because they come from the same family. So Wilson and Orton Gillingham are like under that same umbrella of each other.
And that was an additional question. The continue Orton Gillingham training, is that meaning you're expanding it to additional staff, or you're continuing the training with the people who are currently OG certified?
So what we're doing is we're training so the majority of, like I said, Placentino Miller are trained. We're now training. We're in those initial phases. So some have completed the training over the summer. Some are doing them right now. Then we have a group that would like to get their practicum and get a larger certification in OG. So we're investing our time to provide that to them. So it's why I say continue is because it does take a year-long time to complete your practicum. They're utilized students that are in our district to provide more OG as part of their practicum. So it is a process.
And especially in light of those new guidelines from DESE on this, do we have a plan where we expect 60% or 70% or 80% OG over the next year? Like, do we have a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan on increasing OG certifications?
So we're working on looking at right now how many and how many more do we need. And what we're trying to do is keep up with the number of new teachers coming in. Mm-hmm. So our new special ed teachers that were hired at Placentino and Miller, I was able to provide. And so they're beginning their training coming up this winter. But then, yes, so my hope is by January, when I come back to this group, I'll be able to say, this is the percentage of how many are trained, this is the direction we're going, so that you can better see where we're at.
But we have a commitment within the department to increase the percentages over the course of the next year and the next 2 years.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And have more continuity. I guess you said there's just 2 at the high school, but is that also something we think we need to increase, or the need doesn't? Yeah,
so what we're looking at now is how many more do we need to increase as they go up in grade, right? And what we're doing is shifting to, at Rams in high school is running under the morphology umbrella, which is for the older kids, older level students, that same reading under OG. So we're starting small, right? Because we don't want to over provide either. That's why we looked at our numbers going from 5th to 6th this year to determine how many teachers we should train at Rams. And then we saw a few identified students that were going 8th to 9th that continued to need OG supports. So we chose specific teachers that would have those students and then determine, do we need to add more based on where our numbers are at.
Okay, last question, I promise. It is an area that's really interesting to me. So
Yes.
with these guidelines, is there any type of new guidelines for communication with it? And by that I mean, you find out your child has, whether it's a language-based learning disability or just they're not hitting benchmarks, they're in the red here, and the school says we're going to implement this OG tutor. Is there information, like what does that mean to the average parent, and how do you communicate with them so that they can support that OG learning at home?
Yeah.
And I think years ago maybe it was like, oh, well, if you're not Wilson certified, we can't send these materials, like super secret stuff. Like, do we have more of a partnership with the home now with these materials and educate parents on what this program is?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So myself, Dr. Slaney, and Lisa Robinson, who is our new SSA at Placentino, have all taken a dyslexia course through the University of Colorado, which I think it was truly an amazing experience and really broadened my knowledge around this. So what we would like to do is do some professional development, not only for our staff, but also our families regarding this, and then include our literacy specialists who really are working, in the weeds, so to speak, in the buildings on what can families do at home. So this is what your child's doing at school, and what does that mean when they go home, right? Because I think we do hear that a lot, Dawn, is like, what more can I do for my kid, and what does that look like? Because you don't want to do the opposite of what we might be doing at school either. So really, you should be hearing more about some nights that we will do, some recordings, some resources we'll be sending home in the upcoming months to best kind of clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Two things. First is just a comment. Thanks for what you said about inclusion being a feeling versus a place. I've never heard it put quite that way, and I think that there is this knee-jerk reaction that, well, being in the general ed setting that's inclusion. That's the definition of inclusion. And if a child's not feeling like they can manage that, or they feel different, or they feel it makes them feel, even worse about how they're able to manage in the classroom, I think it doesn't work, and I think that's a really good point. Second is, can you go back to the slide that showed the numbers of IEPs and out-of-district placements? So that was more, I can't do the math that quickly, but it's definitely more than a 10% increase.
So the top line is 12.6% of the IEP increases,
Okay.
and then the overall, though, if you sort of push them together, because if you're saying some 504s turning into IEPs, that's about a 7% increase.
Yeah, so that's pretty significant, and I'm just wondering.
Did you do that in your head, Dan?
I did.
I know.
And
I should have called you earlier.
And on my calculator.
Isn't it 12% and 8%?
So I wanted to draw attention to that because we do budget, and I'm just wondering how your staff is doing, because that's more work, and it's the same number of staff.
Yep.
And I just want to be aware that that's happening.
Yes, no, 100%. And so when I started putting this presentation together and I saw these numbers, I immediately reached out to our SSAs and said, let's start working on our staff schedules and collecting those so that we can begin looking at caseload versus amount of staff, and is it equitable? What do we need? What do we need more of? What don't we need more of, right? So I think that that's definitely something we always look at. Just in my experience in these past, year and a half, as we look at, but something I need to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, because I've been wondering if for years if maybe at some point we need an out-of-district coordinator. But the big picture thing I want to highlight here is that, there are stories all over the country about teachers and burnout. And I think being a teacher is hard. Being a special education teacher is a different level of hard. And your staff is wonderful, but I just want to make sure that I want us to take care of the people that we have and make sure that we're not, that when we start looking at things from a budget perspective, that we're taking care of
supporting the staff that we have, including you.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you, and I think I always speak to this too. I spoke about this last year, is how are we using our staff efficiently and effectively too, right? So taking our staff within building and making sure we're utilizing them in the right way, that, as one grade, sometimes what we'll see is we have bigger pockets of special ed students in a certain grade that then follow through, right? So are we shifting staff in that way as opposed to adding more staff, which we may need to do, but we need to look at all the factors to determine what's best. So something on my mind all the time, and I hear about the burnout, and just something that's always on my mind of how do we make things feel better in education, for sure.
That's it for me. Thank you.
I was just going to say, I was struck by the ELL numbers, because I feel like just a couple of years ago, that number was at 20-something.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's something that we need to
Yeah.
keep track of, because they're coming in at all different points.
I was going to say that
wanted
too. Yeah, well, breaking down that number, what we really need to then look at is what level are they at in their need, right? So 81L students, does that mean that they're fluent, they're not, right? And what are we doing for those kiddos?
I'll speak for a little bit on that. We are finding a lot more of those are lower than the
lower
support. Yes.
So if you
At like a level 1.
If you recall, this year we did add 2 special ed teaching positions that we have not yet been able to fill, but they're still getting posted. And we also added, increased both of our ELL teaching positions, one at Miller and one at the middle school. And we added, I think, 3 additional paraprofessional positions this year. So we have already increased. And I think last year was the year we added the school psychologist. Was that last year?
2 years. I
can't remember last year and the year before.
3 years ago, I think. Yeah.
What do we think the impediment to filling these positions are? Like, what, I mean, are we...
Just aren't people. I mean, at this point in the year, they're already gainfully employed.
Okay.
And we continue to post, but I think, we've actually been fortunate in a lot of positions I'm hearing, because except for those 2 teaching positions, we have filled all of our other teaching positions, which was looking a little nerve-wracking, and you knew that our paraprofessional positions were really kind of scary during the summer, and we did that marketing campaign and some creative programming, and we were able to fill, still missing some. But if you look at the state overall, some of the numbers are
Or just in this area, like I think you and I have talked, I'm in a job alike, and so when obviously we're only looking at student service positions, but one of the directors had put out, let's capture how many open positions we have, and Holliston actually was in really a good place compared to some of the other districts around us. So I do think we did a good job, at that 10th hour of really pulling in as much as we could, but I think just education itself is hard, and it's hard to pull people in and get them to stay, so.
Okay, so I'll ask some questions then.
She has a question?
I was just going to say, thank you for bringing up your point about workload with paraprofessionals, because my mom is a paraprofessional, and I know how hard the job can be sometimes hearing from her, and I'm glad to know that we're thinking about that on a district level.
Yep, always. She's amazing.
So just back to something Don was talking about with OG, and I have a little personal experience with that, but I'm trying to stay away from that.
Yep.
So right now, if a parent comes to us and we has an outside evaluation or has done some research and says, I think that OG is best for my child, are we able to accommodate that?
If we feel we need it. So we're never going to just self-select a methodology, right? So it's looking at the child, what their profile looks like, and then determining what's best for that child and relative to their age, right? I think that's always what we need to keep in mind. Some students do better with a prescribed program. So far as if we're looking at that, we might say Wilson is the better model because it's a step-based model that's prescribed specifically to that student. Whereas OG is more that methodology that is kind of sprinkled in meeting kids where they're at, but is not a step-by-step program. So I think it's just dependent. We certainly would always say if given that situation, if they were dyslexia, if they were diagnosed with dyslexia, yes, we would provide them a multisensory approach. Could I say they would walk in and say, I want OG and that's what I'm getting? That's not how any district really does it. It's really a team-based approach in selecting what's
Right, but
best.
if they have an outside evaluation, the outside evaluator says that the student would benefit from OG over Wilson's,
We would consider it. Yep, for sure. So
are we able to meet it
if we feel it's appropriate, yes, we would meet it.
so we have the capacity?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
With the number of staff.
Correct,
That's right.
yeah.
I mean, ultimately, we're legally obligated to, the team has to make the decision.
Right, like I think.
No,
yeah,
but
yep.
at the same time, that no one writes in OG or Wilson's, you write in multisensory approach, and
Correct.
so legally, we're not obligated to provide OG. In that sense.
And often, we wouldn't start with the program. We would usually start least restrictive and go with a multisensory, bringing in the individual needs of that child. And then, if they're not, after looking at their progress monitoring, then they might go on to it.
Correct, because I think I don't want to get hung up on if something's written and we bring it in, that's what we give.
Right.
It needs to be a team-based decision, right? So oftentimes we will get a lot of recommendations from outside providers, some of it which we can do, some of it which we can't, some which don't really fit when we see a student all day long in a school environment and we're with them all day. With the input from a parent is determining that. So we just need to be careful. I don't want to box myself into saying if a doctor writes OG, then yes, we're going to give them
parents
OG.
are part of the team.
100%. Yes.
Okay, and so what you're saying is that we do have
We have the capacity.
We have the
to provide
capacity.
OG. Yes.
Okay. And that's great to hear because
Yeah.
that side has done wonders for my daughter. So so I just noticed you have all those resources in there, and one of I think when we talked, I forget, in June or earlier this year in September, I'd asked if you could send that out proactively to parents. Did you do that? Links to some like the guides going of like the IEP process. I'm still hearing there's still a lot of parents who are just confused by the overall process. It's insanely complicated and crazy. And some of the information in these resources seem really good, but I couldn't find them when I just went to the website. But when I clicked on the links, they were sort of there. So were we?
So of course, 2 weeks ago I held our CPAC meet and greet, which I went over all of this, provided these links, and they're posted to the webpage. Last night I held a parent night that was understanding the IEP process. Myself and Emily Lurie went through the entire IEP document, what each section means, what our acronyms mean. I'm very mindful now of we just do all this babble, right, and think people know what it means. And recorded that and have the same links, because I do think these links are helpful, and posted those to our webpage. So everything is I'm trying to be mindful of not pushing too much out.
No, but
all the time.
if someone is starting to enter into the special education process 504 IEP, do we send them an email with these resources? Do we tell the SSAs to sort of say, hey, get them all these resources proactively?
Yeah, so the family resource guide is given to every family that's newly registered, whether they're on an IEP or they're not. That link goes out from Kim Sexton, and I also have given that to all of our SSAs and procedural assistants. So whenever a new family comes in, that's emailed out. It's also on the webpage of every school in the district and on our main district page. So the family resource guide, if you look that up, really walks people through the process of a 504, of child find, of an IEP. It provides all these resources. It provides a flow chart of who do you start with, who do you go to.
Right. I'm in that resource guide, and I'm sort of looking, and there's I didn't see an easy flowchart.
It used to be a physical book.
It did use, it was a binder.
Binder, yeah, I had
Yeah.
one.
Where do you fit into that process?
So far, I'm not sure.
The IEP, do you have a role in the IEP process?
Yes, so what we went through the flow chart 2 weeks ago at the meet and greet is the SSA is the umbrella over the building.
Yep.
From them are the liaisons and specialists, right? So sometimes if you're on a 504, that goes through the counselor. If a parent is struggling with a 504 and try to reach out to that counselor and don't feel like their needs are being met, they then go to the SSA.
Okay.
If the SSA doesn't seem to meet the needs of that parent and the parent is still struggling, then they know they go to the SSD, which would be me at this role.
Okay, so then you are sort of part of the
Yes,
okay.
yep. And then, of course, I oversee all of the out-of-districts, so I'm a lot of go-tos for a lot of families out
No, you're
of
very busy.
districts. Yep.
Very busy.
But yes, so that's all outlined in the meet and greet links.
Great. So our IEPs increased by 12.6%. When, like, is the 509 number, is that year end, like June?
Correct.
Okay, so,
Or right around it, I should say. I'm sorry, I can't
so
say
it's-
like June and last day of school, but in the spring, we were at 509. So the last time I think I spoke to you was in May.
yeah, okay, so then over the summer, we increased by 12.6%.
Or right around there, yep.
And then beginning of this year. Okay.
Yep.
Where are those kids? Like what grade, do you have a distribution?
Oh, I could break that down for you. I didn't
Okay.
come with that, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yep.
We were going to get that level of detail.
No, I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah.
So that's it, you know.
I will tell you that the numbers, just speaking off the cuff, I know they decrease as the kids get older, right? Which is exactly what you want.
Right.
And that's what I talked about last night at Understanding the IEP is what you want. You don't want necessarily a child to be on an IEP forever. What you want is for your child to gain strategies, understand interventions that work for them, and then begin to apply them so they become independent learners, right? So our trajectory is right where I want it to be so far as numbers dropping when they get to middle of the middle school up into the high school. So you will see them drop there.
Oh, no, sure,
Yeah.
understood, but I'm just kind of curious if we're seeing, if it's front-loaded, if it's in third grade, where we're seeing the numbers increase. The 6 or 14% increase in out-of-district placements, that to me is actually a pretty significant number because we all know, A, what that means for the child and how much difficulty they're having. But then obviously, from a financial perspective, which is obviously less secondary to the child, but still not unimportant. So we ended last year with 40. When did we know we had 6 more out of districts?
So I will tell you that 3 of the 6 were move-ins from other districts throughout the year. So when they move in prior to April 1st, we then inherit that out-of-district cost. So that's where those numbers increase. Did we see a few more go out of district? 100%. And I do feel like our staff and the services we provided, we gave everything we could to those kiddos, and this was what was best for them.
When a child moves into the district, do we have the ability to review the case and see if we can meet the services in district, or do we have to just continue on with what the out-of-district placement is?
Well, we certainly can review it and see. I would say that these that moved in were not ones that we would disagree with
Okay.
at all.
So half of the increase was inorganic, if you would.
Correct.
But
Yep.
initially, whatever IEP they come in with, we
Yeah.
have to.
Sure,
have
so
to
you look at
implement
property,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
They
absolutely,
might
right.
request another team.
Correct. Yep.
I think that's, just back to the dyslexia work that you're doing. Is there anything that, would it make sense, because I know one of the sort of the requests from the community forum was some sort of like dyslexia task force or something like that. Is there something that to be said for forming a group of parents, educators, a school committee member to sort of help? I mean, it does seem like dyslexia is one of those big issues that we're sort of facing right now.
I think it's a.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Dyslexia, dysgraphia, all the different forms of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. I think it's important that internally as a district, we do the training and we get our hands wrapped around how we're going to help kids in this area. I have not seen, and if I'm wrong, please feel free to reach out and tell me. I've not seen other districts create dyslexia task force that include community members or parents, but what I do feel strongly about is educating our parents on what they can do for their child or what we're doing with their children. So what I would like to see us do here is really wrap our hands with our staff around it and then provide forums or provide community nights where we can share with families resources and things that they can do at home.
But I do wonder too, with some of the intervention tools that we have, and with students now having Chromebooks and so forth, are we making sure that parents know some of the additional things that they can use at home?
Yeah, the apps and things that are helpful for, yes, absolutely. I think we need to do that. Yep.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Maybe plug in.
All right. So next up is I think it picks up pretty well, so as far as you can get it and then just kind of...
Or maybe I'll move that this way.
The next one.
I would say we're running right on time, so that's great. It's just, you know, it's all the time. That's why I asked some of the questions, actually, just to keep it, so we didn't end early.
Am I able to share?
If you, or someone gives you,
Someone just made you the co-host.
I did. I made you the.
Yeah, should.
I already did.
so then yes.
We play a video. Will you guys be able to hear it? I don't know.
Try it.
Let's find out.
Would you like to introduce your team members?
Yes.
So if you want to do that, you might have to share the computer audio.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna.
So if you share your screen first, and then you should be able to get audio at the top.
And then you're saying open up audio?
It might say that at the top. and then
Yeah,
just-
so you would have
Start.
to go to advanced and then.
Just talk from here. Do you think it'll catch it?
Start? I don't know. We'll have to-
It's not for a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it should be.
Hello, everyone. So we're trying something different today, and I'll get a chance to talk a little bit about that. But Jerry Overnay, I'm the director of STL and Equity, and with me I have some amazing people, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Sarah Kuhn. I'm the technology integration specialist here, and the advisory co-advisor.
I'm co-advisory leader and business teacher here, Taryn Lane. Nice to see everyone tonight. And Harry Smith.
I'm Harry Smith. I'm a student, a senior at the high school. I'm a previous SAL for the Student Advisory Leadership Program. Thank you for having me.
Jerry, I just want to click slideshow.
Yeah. All right. All media is coming together all at once. Okay. So, in reflecting how I presented in the past, right? I think one of the things that I've tried to do is provide an overview of all the different things happening, especially because the role that I stepped into was a newly created role. But in doing that, I also think that it's really important for me to bring voices from the field who are doing the work, who are engaging in the work, to bring life to the work, right? Now, granted, I can't bring every voice of the work that is happening, but my hope is that every time I come back and present, I bring a different perspective, a different voice of what's happening out there in the work. Okay, so with that, I asked my amazing partners to come with me today. So today, what are we going to do? So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to talk about, I'm always going to anchor our work into the structure of what we say is safe and supportive. I'm going to talk a little about where are we going this year, right? I'm not going to spend as much time as reviewing everything that's happened in the past 2 years, but spend time on where we're headed. And then we're also going to have a chance to talk about two things that have occurred that I think are moving, or will continue to move the work. One is a district SEL mental health review team that came out with some recommendations for how the district can support schools. We're going to talk about a trajectory that we're engaged in with Ruler. We're going to talk about the Holliston High School SEB team that Sarah Kuhn is a part of, but how it ties in directly to advisory, right? That's why I asked our advisory to come and share a little about the work that they're doing. So in that work, and I'm not going to read this, but this is available on our site, and I always want to anchor, when we talk safe and supportive schools, in many ways, I like to describe it as the soil for belonging to fully live. If we hear this term of belonging, right, or a feeling, right, being inclusion, the soil of that is a safe and supportive school, right? For students to fully achieve where we want them to be, for students to really feel connected, to truly feel they belong, they need to be part of a safe and supportive school, right? And also, I don't think we're ever done, but it's a space that we always aspire to constantly create or think about how do we get better at that work. So how does a safe and supportive school speak to this visual of MTSS? Last year I shared these visuals, but a safe and supportive school is the umbrella in which MTSS should live in. So when we talk about Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, when we talk about supporting students at different levels for whatever needs they might need, it should be under the umbrella of a safe and supportive school, right? That is really what's going to uplift all the practice we talked about. We just heard an amazing presentation from my colleague Jess Beatty. In order for those practices to fully live, a space where they feel safe and supported only augments the work that's happening in our schools. So, and to me, I think visuals are important because I think when we talk about this work, it's hard to sometimes juxtapose all of the language that goes with it. But I think really understanding a visual that speaks to the way we want school to feel and how MTSS plays into that. So what is some of the work that's happening this year, but has been a 3-year trajectory so far? So one of those is, one of the things that I lead is called SSP, Student Services Providers, and that's kind of a group of all school counselors, school adjustment counselors, BCDA, school psychologists. And one of those things that we've always been proud of, every single year, we end the year with, what do you think you need? How can I support, how can we support you differently? And one of the things they asked for this year is, every other month we come together across the district and we talk about the alignment work. But then the other months, now I'm going to be going to the schools to talk with them as a team at their school to say, what do you need here? How are things working? How do we support you at the school level? So they wanted to be able to engage at the developmentally appropriate conversations, but also across the district as well, right? So I say that because I think that one of the pieces that's important is to make sure that I'm meeting the needs of what our educators need, right? So making sure that that SSP space that had been created even before I was here is authentic to them and to their needs. Currently, and I'm really excited about this, we have close to 60 educators right now taking either Trauma 1, Trauma 2, or Trauma 3 that we partnered with Les University, offered right here on campus. 60 educators is about the staff of a whole school, right? Maybe not the high school, right? That's a lot bigger. But just imagine to go to a school where our educators have grappled with all the research that we know around the impact of trauma on learning and how do we augment our classrooms in that way, right? And we have people, over a year and a half who've now taken their 3rd section. They're in that course right now, right? With 20 educators. That speaks to the commitment and also to kind of, it's meeting their needs, right? If you offer something and you take it once, you don't come back, maybe for whatever reason it didn't meet your needs, but we have educators continually coming. That tells me this is a powerful piece. We also, this past year, that's going to be something I share, we convened a district team of student support, I guess, experts, right, the people who are in the field who are supporting students, and we really engage in the conversation. What are our gaps? What are some of our needs? And what are some of the things that me, district, can do to support this work and align the work, right? One of the things that I always talked about when I presented over the past couple of years, and I know in many ways as a school committee, you supported that sentiment, which is we need to make sure we align, right? We can't be a district of siloed work. We need to align the work that we do across our schools. So in many ways, I'm going to share some of those recommendations that came out of that piece. We have 3 schools who are now entering their final year of a 3-year PBIS Academy. We also, gotta move my camera here. We also, which I was really proud of, and that's what the pictures on the top left are, when we launched our district PD day, each school, we did individuated PD. But it wasn't created by me, it was created by me and their team. So it was led by teachers, it was led by leadership, and we presented, what we presented was authentic to that school. Right? When we presented here at Holliston High School, I stood right beside Sarah Kuhn, and we talked about the work that we were doing at the high school. And that feels and rings different when it's being led by your own peers and colleagues in the field just as well. We're also entering, Holliston High School is entering year 2 of Sub Academy. I'm going to share a little bit about what those results were. We also identified, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means, but we identified we needed to align across the district. What's our Tier 1 trajectory for SEL? And I'll talk a little about what's some of the gaps that came out when I first came in and why we needed to align that. And then we have 3 schools who are now engaging in Culturally Responsive Education Academy through DESE as well. So that's some of the work that began, but is continuing. One of the pieces that I just want to augment, this word belonging we hear a lot. And I think that belonging is an outcome of all the efforts we try to put in. So when we say DEI, when we say inclusion is a feeling, it's really to create a space of belonging. But belonging requires us to bring to the mix SEL, MTSS, universal design for learning, higher order thinking, strong professional development, all to come together to create the ingredient for that, right? You know, for me, I'd say it's the adobo to the seasoning, how I would cook at home. That's what's necessary for that work to happen. So one of the new pieces that we're going to be engaging in is something called Mass Ready. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, the Department of Education, and the Mass School Committee, I don't know if they're called organization, but have come together and they created this document. And what this document is, this is a guide that all superintendents in Massachusetts are being encouraged to utilize. It comes with 11 dimensions and is really geared to move and create action plans at the district level around the equity, diversity, inclusion work, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what this means, but I wanted to share it because this is publicly available, right? So at your own time, if you take the QR code and you scan that, you'll be able to see what's the work that is being asked of every school to engage in when it comes to equity, diversity, and inclusion work that needs to happen at the district level. So one of the pieces that is extremely important, right, is that this guide calls for us, A, to have clear DEI goals to speak to where we want to go. It also calls for the structures. Like, in other words, you just can't arrive and say, here's what we're going to work towards. What's the structure we're going to come together to kind of talk about and wrestle with the work that needs to happen and ensure that it happens? And then lastly, is to build a strong culture with powerful partnerships, right? It's not enough for us as a district just to create a team and say, we created a team. We also need to create partnerships across, from school to community and with experts in the field to really move this work, right? Including students, families, etc. So that's going to be a part of this work. So how does this structure look? Under Arch 2, which is part of our strategic plan, the title for that is Social Emotional Wellbeing. The pink is the work that started, right? You've heard me refer to a district SEL mental health leadership team. That's a team that kind of is put together those recommendations. The orange under that is work that's already happening. You've heard me talk about PBIS Tier 1, the SEB Academy. You've heard me talk about peer leadership, or at least as Rams has presented, they've talked about some of the peer leadership work. We're here to talk about our SALs and advisory, so this is the work already happening. But the work in the green piece, that hadn't launched yet, right? And in many ways, it's because when we start this work, you can't launch it all at once, right? So we're in a space where we now need to start launching this work, but also we're doing it in an aligned way in which across Massachusetts, they're using this Ready document as an alignment from district to district. One of the great things of this Ready document is that not only does it guide you through where to start, but it also links it directly to what the law, DESE law says, and best practices. So also, you're linking it to what the Department of Education is asking us to do. So the part on the right is going to be the part that we engage in. The purple, over here is blue, but purple on the screen, that's work that's already happening. We have schools that have established climate and culture teams. We have schools engaging in CRE Academy. Project 351 work has been happening for years here in Holliston. So the reason I say this is because I think that in me saying that we need to engage and create a DEI direct, like a DEI trajectory in the leadership space, doesn't mean the work has not been engaging, but we do need to align and make sure that we organize and really think about where we want to go, right? To go away from the passionate starts to all of those passions coming together and moving us in one direction. So in speaking to that district team that came together, on the screen you'll see these are all the people who participated in that district SEL mental health action team that came and gave perspective as far as what should we be doing. And in that perspective taking, we engaged in 3 over a long period of time sessions. One was, why should we develop this cohesive system? Session 2 was really identifying processes and practices. And the third session was like, so what are the action steps we need to do to get there? And the action steps that we arrived at are 4, and they're really in line with the high school steps as well, which tells us we're in the right direction. So the first step is across all 4 schools to build a consistent understanding for why MTS is important and how it supports mental health, right? We want all of our educators to understand the connection of this work together. The second recommendation is to be able to utilize a Tier 1 SEL resource framework, K-8 or K-12. That was a gap that we identified. When I came into this district, we had 2 of our elementary schools were using something called Open Circle. The year I came in, Open Circle closed its doors. And the model that Open Circle used was that every year you'd have to send people to get trained, especially new people. So in them closing the doors, you create a sustainability problem. But also, as we know in education, with turnover, every year you're going to have to be sending people to get trained in a resource. The middle school was using Second Step, so then they were using a different SEL resource to support students and to build SEL skills. So we were engaged kind of in a trajectory in which every school was kind of really working to engage and think about how do we build these skills up in our students, but we weren't talking to each other and we weren't taking a aligned approach. So that was a gap that was identified by our educators as well. Another gap, and this speaks directly to student supports, is around how do we identify and make sure that we're implementing the right support for Tier 2, right? If you recall, when I talk about the tiers, Tier 1 is for all, Tier 2 is like a targeted group, Tier 3 is the highest level, right? Tier 3 might be, for instance, students we talked about IIP with receiving support services, but Tier 2 students might be students who just need targeted intervention. But one of the pieces we identified is we're really lacking not only a structure, but a system to make sure that we can identify Tier 2 and across the tier of students, but also make sure that we're providing the right support. And the last piece was we wanted to kind of really make sure that we're building on practices on analyzing data. And the reason I bring that up is data should not be a four-letter word. Data should not be a bad thing. Data should be something, it's a checkup. How are we doing? Are we making sure that we're providing the right supports to students when they need it, right? So these 4 recommendations came directly from that team that I showed you. And the way we're going to use these recommendations, this is the recommendations that I'm going to be engaged in over the next 3 years. They speak directly to our school improvement plan, but it's the work that across our district, our educators said they wanted me to engage and support them in. So then how does this tie into our SEL trajectory? I've already kind of highlighted a little bit about some of the gaps we saw. When I first started, year 21-22, we had a lot of starts and stops. We also were seeing data from the Metro West Health Survey telling us that students were having a harder time regulating emotions, dealing with coping strategies, etc. So we wanted to kind of think about this next step of a Tier 1 resource. How do we support that skill development? So one of the things we did is, and I shared this in one of my first presentations, is that we established also a cross-sector team that looked just like the team that I showed you to look at the SEL resources out there. There's a lot of resources out there, but we utilize CASTLE as kind of like our research database. CASTLE is an organization that ensures that all our SEL trajectory is research-based, right? Because there's plenty of research behind it. From there, we narrowed down where we're at this year is using something called Ruler. And Ruler is, to put it mildly, it's about emotions. It's about emotional intelligence, and it's about that emotions matter. And that's a really simple statement, but it's a big context. And what I mean is, when our data tells us that emotions are the space that students have struggled with the most, especially coming out of COVID, and how do we share emotions, explain emotions, problem solve, which is emotional spaces. We've seen behavior uptick, which usually is an outcome of emotional space as well. We really wanted to identify a resource that would help us build those skills up, and a resource that could be embedded into classrooms, right? And maybe at some point, as I share the trajectory, Sarah Kuhn took the summer training, but we wanted to look at a resource that wasn't about, we have to do this for 15, 20 minutes once a week and build it into a calendar. We wanted to think about a resource that anybody could do, right? If I walked into this space and I saw this room feeling extremely anxious, how do I bring us down? How do I connect and we have a conversation about emotions to then be able to transition to where we want to go, right? We got to provide that common language, but we also have to provide that emotional intelligence starting from pre-K through 12. And imagine the trajectory if we're all engaged in that through the moment kids enter our schools. So the last piece I'll say about this is that I'm sure at some point there'll be a presentation on the DESE's new health framework. The Department of Education just for the first time renewed our wellness standards that have not been renewed in well over 20, 25 years. In those standards, it directly calls for districts to engage in building up emotional intelligence, supporting not only emotional regulation, but emotional language across the schools, and establishing SEL as a resource in that way. So this also really aligns us to be able to meet the need of that framework standard that actually comes into play next school year. So what does RULER stand for? Recognizing emotions in self and others, understanding the causes and the consequences of emotions, labeling emotions accurately, expressing emotions appropriately, and regulating emotions effectively. One of the pieces they say is we have to name attainment. We have to be able to engage in language, social emotional learning language, in order to really be able to address the challenges in our classrooms every day. What will this look like? And the other piece too is, I probably could have sat here and done a 45-minute presentation just on RULER, right? So part of this is, to be honest, is we're going to establish a session at some point this year, probably a forum, where we really share what RULER is, with voices from the field, right? Not from the director of SEL and Equity, but people who've taken the class and talk about, I'm excited for this, and this is how I think it's going to benefit my kids, right? So we're going to do that as well, but I just wanted to provide an overview of what this is. We, this past summer, sent 3 to 5 people from every building. Didn't send, they virtually were sent, to attend a train-the-trainer model. So in other words, we now have 3 to 5 people in every school who can train others on what RULER is. So we're establishing a bench, which means we're not going to have to send people to go to a training. We're going to build up that capacity here in-house to be able to support new staff as they come in, and the trajectory for that work as well. This summer, what they call for year 1 is engaging and doing professional development for teachers. There's no expectation that we're launching this with students this year. The belief in RULER is that we really want teachers to be able to wrestle with, practice, learn, ask questions, look at, establish a relationship with what RULER is before we say let's roll out with kids, right? What oftentimes is best practice if we could. And then next year, this would be the place where we would roll out with students and roll out with families. And the reason I say roll out with families is because RULER is also about helping our families also utilize that emotional language or that SEL skill to travel from school to home, right? Because we think that's how we would get the most impact of this work. RULER is not a curriculum, it's not just a resource, it's a mindset. Yes, it's a resource that any educator can use, but it's a way that we want classrooms to feel. We want emotions to be okay in our schools. Oftentimes I'll talk with educators and I'll be like, how you doing? And they'll be like, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine, right? And one of the things I'll tell them is like, hey, you did RULER. It's okay to not be fine. It's okay to feel exhausted, to be tired, to be happy, to feel joy, to feel anger. But if we can talk about that and like put that on the table, we can also figure out what to do with that, right? Maybe there's something we could do together to figure out what the next step for that is, right? So it's really kind of establishing a framework that we all work from. So let me transition to why this wonderful team is here. As you heard me say, at Holliston High School, we engage in SEB Academy. And what SEB Academy really is if you think about that umbrella and that MTSS piece, it's geared for the high school to establish that for themselves. For them to evaluate and look at what do we have across the tiers here at our high school, and how do we know we're meeting the needs of our own kids. What you see here is the team that engaged in that work this past year and continues to engage in that work this year. And actually, we just co-led a presentation with staff at the district PD day as well. And here were the recommendations that came from this team. 1, build skills of all educators to incorporate SEL-related skills in their classrooms and interactions with students, right? You already see the alignment with the one that I shared out at the district level. And these things happen independently, which tells us that the recommendations happening in both spaces, in many ways, are speaking to the needs of our schools because they're happening independently, we're ending in the same place. The second piece was develop, as you can see, a system to data collection for all one-on-one interactions, but also to develop effective systems for Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. The high school identified and said, we need to do this here too, right? And even our school counselors were saying, we talk and work with kids all the time, but we haven't really tracked to see, like, what are the trends? What are the needs? So we're going to try to figure that out. And the last piece is, how do we support the adults at Holliston High School with their own wellness and SEL needs, right? One of the things that comes from trauma-sensitive education, from that learning is, just like our students have stuff that they carry in their backpack with them that we'll never see, us adults do as well, right? I know when coming out of COVID, et cetera, we all have challenges. How can we be our best selves if we don't build a system that also supports the needs of our educators, right? We need our best selves, our best adults in front of our kids every day to support them in their learning as well. But one of the pieces that I think is extremely important is when we started to identify how does this happen? Especially number 1, how do we incorporate SEL skills into classrooms? And how do we make sure we're meeting the needs of our kids? If you recall the picture that Jess and I once put up of building a school, and we said the cement, the foundation, the most important part, having a tier 1 trajectory is the most important part for this piece. And really, when we think about what is one of the most meaningful tier 1s here at the high school, it's advisory. And the reason I wanted to also provide a space to kind of bring this to life is because I think that in many ways, I can come and share some of the work, but we have passionate educators leading this work. The moment that I asked Sarah and Taryn if they'd be willing to come and share some of the progress, yeah, no problem. And I was like, it's at night, right? And it's like during a school day, right? And it's at night, and they're like, yeah, no problem, yeah. And then we're like, we should bring students. Yeah, let's bring students. And right, so like, this is the passion of the work that's being led. And I think that it's really important to kind of highlight that work, because I think at times, especially when I present, it feels like it's this overwhelming thing of happening. But the reality is they're the ones moving the work, right? And it's happening. So with that being said, I want to turn it over to, our wonderful team.
So hi everyone. So again, my name's Taryn Ling, business teacher, co-advisory leader with Sarah. So we kind of jumped in 2 years ago. It's my 3rd year here. So after my first year, Sarah walks into the math room. Yeah, end of the year, like literally, I think it's the last day of school. Just to fill you all in, and she's like, so, and I was like, I have the email pulled up, they're looking for 2 people. She's like, so, and I'm like, you want to do it, don't you? As together as a combined effort. So we kind of jumped in. I thought of it, we are jumping off a cliff together, holding hands, and we're going to see how this goes. So this has meant a lot to us, and we've put a lot of work into it, and we're excited to kind of share the story of where we're at, where we can see this going, and just kind of, it's been a very organic story, to say the least, so we're excited to share that. And Harry has been here on our journey, so.
I think that was a perfect introduction. We're just going to go from here. This picture I just would point out is our this year's sales, and so we're really proud of this picture. This is they arrived. Principal List gave us shirts for them this year, and we have little definitions on the back that a few treasured souls from last year got to try out.
We're going to get to that.
So it's all the excitement of the first day. They were getting freshman orientation.
So before we jump into, we have a little clip just to recap our year and our story from last year, but we kind of wanted to lead with this in building. Kind of our mission is, first off, inspiring with voice. So our biggest thing throughout starting this program was feedbacks along the way from both staff and students and all stakeholders that were involved in the program. So just really being able to collect the data, but with that said, using student voice. So we'll kind of jump around a little bit, but one of the biggest things at the beginning of the year, we were inspired. I had gone to a design camp in California the year prior, and the design challenge was, how do you bring joy back into education? And I was like, oh boy, this is a loaded question, but it was a design thinking. Some of you know that's my passion within the classroom, but it's a design thinking challenge. As educators, I was in California, and we had to build a prototype, what is joy in education? And that is a challenge, especially for adults, right? Like you're the student right now, you're not the teacher. So that was really our inspiration for the first year. And with that said, we said, how can we bring joy? Like, let's hear from everyone. We want to hear from you. What do you want to see this being? So our first activity, we just asked, what brings you joy, everyone? Followed by the second week, what is going to bring you joy here in Holliston? It was kind of our first year last year, back from COVID/pandemic per se, where there's no normal anymore, but back to a kind of normal, whatever that means. So with that said, we listened to the students, and we'll get to it, but full scope end of the year, we did a field day last year, and I can't even provide or express the joy it brought us as educators, and Harry will speak to it, but not one kid was on their phone, or maybe they were checking something, but like we were doing, quote, old school activities, so to speak, of just pure joy. So we'll get to that, but we did that because of what the students said at the beginning of the year. Rebuilding, we really wanted to rebuild the program. Again, we kind of took it and wanted to create that fresh start, so to speak. So like, where do you even begin with that? And then just really creating opportunities. So Sarah and I had the opportunity to go to California last year, and last year that challenge was, in January, how do you build your monument as an individual and as a community? And last year, at the end of the year, we had every advisory's monument up here, and it was really moving. Rooms came together and expressed, and Harry can speak to that as well, just what their advisory room did, but just seeing the culture come together, and even if it's a 51% buy-in of starting that change, it was pretty moving for us, so.
Don't start that. Part of our process of onboarding into advisory, Jeriel sent us on some training, and I'm forgetting the name of the company.
Great Schools Partnership.
Okay, Great Schools Partnership. And so we were tasked on creating a vision, and really, honestly, like, this was our first time working collaboratively in the summer with an assistant principal, and so we just went all in, and we came up with our mission statement, and they give us permission to keep evolving. I know, it's like a while, like years. And then we came up with the little brand that we keep putting on all of our things, because we really just wanted to see everyone inside of the community partnering. And we also found that previously, the year before us actually, the advisory leader had designated the following vision of a graduate as that had first come out. And so we still found that so valuable and created that each month we were following a different, we like to call them buckets, I guess, but a bucket or a pie piece of the vision of a graduate. So we kind of modeled it after that to tie it all together and to make sure we were really seeing the vision living. I'm going to play it, we're hoping.
If our video works. This just recaps last year. So guys, there's no audio.
Do full screen.
You can kind of see it go through.
That was our monument.
Yes. This one was another one.
Yeah, we swore up on this one while we were in here.
So that just kind of was a run through of kind of where we started, where we went for the I'm forgetting what year we're in, so 22-23 season, so to speak. So we brought Harry here tonight to really just speak to his experience. He came on board last year, and he was a SAL, so led the program, and Sarah and I jumping into this, and we wanted him to kind of just speak to his experience and all the things. So, all you there.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you guys again for having me here. It's a pleasure. I'm very excited to share. The year was packed. We did a lot of things that I couldn't have, I never thought I'd be part of. It was an amazing experience. It started at the beginning of the school year, and we met just before the year started to talk about what we were going to do. And that first day, you know, it's still the summer. Everyone wants to enjoy the summer, but everybody showed up. Everybody was ready to go and was like, hey, what are we doing, guys? And, it was that, it started right away that everyone seemed ready to go and wanting to, like, help and see what this idea that Taryn and Sarah had in store for us. And so the first time that we met our freshmen, it was the freshman orientation, and we were told that, it was their first impression of the high school, and we were their leaders. And even though we didn't really feel like leaders yet, we all came together. We showed them where to go, who to talk to, and we were always all there for questions. And as the day went on, we could see that all the freshmen were looking up to us. Any question they had, they weren't scared to ask. We did a great job making everyone feel comfortable and supported, and that felt really good, because that was the whole idea of that day, was to help those kids that they're in a new place and they need some support, and we were there for them in every way that they need us to be. As the year started with our meetings, it started off slow because it's a new program and it needed some fine tuning, but that's what we did. We met every once in a while, all the Sals, and Sarah and Taryn asked us, what do you guys think? How's it going? What's good? What's bad? And we would all get in a big circle. We'd talk. We'd share. Oh, well, this week, these kids had a really good time doing this. We didn't expect it, but it was awesome. So we write that down, and then the next week we'd do something similar. Or some weeks we'd have ideas. We'd be like, oh, this is going to be amazing, and it just didn't work out. And for whatever reason, we're like, oh, this is going to be so fun, and nobody's really on board with it. So we would fine tune it, we'd report back, and everyone just kind of worked together. We bounced all ideas off each other to help make the program a lot more fun for the kids. And as the year went on, that's exactly what happened. We started to brainstorm more activities based on what kids said they wanted, and we came up with things like the makerspace with all those projects that you saw. That was just a go get some materials and make whatever you enjoy. And for personally my advisory, I came down here with a couple of my kids. We got some supplies. I told them, go nuts, get whatever you guys want. Glue, popsicle sticks, anything. And we came back to the classroom, and everyone was like, oh, and we just put something together. There's no real rhyme or reason. It was an awesome way to have everyone, everyone was talking, everybody was putting new ideas in, changing this, changing that, laughing. It was a great time. It wasn't a hard thing to do. It was simple, but it was effective, which was really awesome this year. We did a lot of stuff like that, and we also the SAL program was a great way for the juniors like myself to get meet some of the freshmen and build that community, because they're coming in and we already have our community. We want to help them become part of the high school community, and it was the perfect way to do it because they come every Friday to our advisory, and we'd say, how's the week going? What's new with you guys? Are you guys enjoying your classes? Any questions? And we'd answer all their questions. They want to know what classes are they taking next term. It's what do I do? I got new classes. Where do I go? What do I do? We'd explain everything to them. We'd help them with all their questions, and it really it helped us come together, and we'd even come together with other advisories. If one advisory couldn't answer it, that we'd go next door and say, hey, what can you help us out with this? And so we'd talk, and then that would get those kids involved with even more kids. And just as the year went on, the community grew closer and closer together. Another activity that I really liked that Taryn mentioned was the activity day. Sorry, field day.
Yeah.
We got the opportunity to set up a whole bunch of backyard games, and it was really simple. But once we we welcomed everyone out. We made a human tunnel, all the way down into the field, arms up, and we're cheering for all the freshmen. And they're hesitant at first, but once they got into it, they really got into it. And everyone's having fun. There's cornhole. People are meeting new people again. It was an amazing experience to have everyone out on the field together, playing games, having fun. Like Karen said, nobody's on their phones. Everything was happening right there, and it was perfect. And at the end, we got to all talk about it and appreciate how much effort went into that and how amazing these two were to set that up for us and to make sure that we could do that. We took some time out of our day. It's this is a perfect thing for us to come together. And it would absolutely not have been possible without these two phenomenal helpers. They hit the ground running with all the SALs, and when we didn't know what to do, we could go to them, and even when they didn't know what to do, they figured it out, and they came back to us, and we bounced back off each other. They had ideas. They asked us if we thought it would work. We try it. We say, oh, it doesn't really work this way. So we brainstorm something. We try it again, and we keep going until it works. And it really wouldn't have been possible without them. So I'm really appreciative to have been part of that, and to also be part of the process of selecting the new SALs with the picture that you saw of this year's SALs. I got to be part of the interview process to find the next group, and much to our surprise, there were a ton of kids that wanted to do it. It seemed they gained way more popularity than we expected, and we ended up having almost 100 kids sign up and be interviewed, and I'm lucky to. I get to sit down one-on-one with the kids and talk with them and be like, yeah, what do you think this means to you? What is the value of this program for you? And there were amazing answers, and unfortunately we couldn't take all of them because there's just too many kids. But the interest was amazing, and I'm glad I could talk to the next generation of them. I'm sure they're going to be the same way. They get to select the next group. And each year, we'll build up. We have to offer our ideas to Karen and Sarah to help them with areas that we didn't have hindsight in. And this group this year is going to be able to do the same thing. And hopefully it can happen year after year, and it'll just build on top of each other. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Karen. I appreciate you having me here. It's been amazing.
Thank you. So one of the things that we looked at was last year, our mission, kind of what was driving us was what gives you joy and trying to spread the joy. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. You can go home now. So we shared about, so in year one, that was really our theme, was to spread joy. And I mean, open-ended question, right? What does that mean to people? So we really set that up as a driving question to all the students that were involved in advisory, which if the community doesn't know, that's 9th, 10th, and 11th graders there at the high school. So just looking at that, we really wanted to model design thinking principles coming into this. We were able to have that California experience this past year, which actually HEF sponsored. So thank you, HEF, if you're listening. But they were actually able to sponsor Sarah and I to go out there. And I just want to emphasize, Jerry, I'll keep speaking to support and collaboration. And I'm not the educator I am today without that. It speaks volumes when you have the support and being able to collaborate together. So, and the three of us have been able to collaborate a lot over this last year. So we kind of, first half of the year, it was a struggle, and it was a lot of brainstorming, and brainstorming can be messy, and students don't know what to do with that. Second semester we come back, and they're like, wait, it's cooking, I'm taking my brainstorming, and I'm putting purpose to what we were doing the first half, and so you just saw the story. So this year we're moving into a year 2 trajectory. really moving into this theme of sparking curiosity, and I'll hand it off to Sarah.
Because I am all about like learning by experience, this really speaks a lot to me, because if we're able to be curious, then we're definitely in a safe and supportive place. And having that curiosity enables us to kind of pursue our passions in life. So as I work in the makerspace and the kids want to like learn how to use a sewing machine and they want you to teach them, I say like, well, here's a guide. Let's see what you can do. And it's about not having like absolute success, getting an A for everything that we do, but being able to take safe risks and be curious. So I really have had the pleasure of like working in this advisory program and building the community, and that's kind of where it starts. We wanted every student to be able to connect with one grown-up in the building, so that over the 3 years when they attend advisory, they know that every Friday they see that teacher that they can connect with and say, you know what, I'm not okay today, or you know what, today was the best day, let me tell you why. So that's kind of like our driving place. And so building off of last year's curriculum into this is also like, kindness just fuels everything, right? So we're using random acts of kindness for our curriculum base as we move forward, because, I mean, there's no better thing than kindness, and finding different ways to be kindness and accepting of everyone to build on inclusion of everyone in the school. So again, we're looking at another design challenge, as now it has become my passion as well. It's contagious, but we're asking them this year to build something that represents their individuality within their advisory, and then that way that starts that conversation like, hey, I noticed you put skis on your monument. I like to ski too, and it just starts that conversation. One of the exercises that we did last year in California, we were thrown into a group of strangers, much like our students on the first day of school or in a new advisory, where they're not able to be like, oh, great, this is really fun. It's really stressful, but we were able to, because we're grown-ups, put down things and, you know, put down our walls and be able to talk to the stranger across the table. And I met a woman who basically had the same childhood growing up, and her parents were in the military and she traveled, and it was like, wow, this is a stranger from California, and she moved out west, and those of you who know me, I moved up to Canada and I came back, and so having that travel united us. So we're always looking for the common grounds, and it does start with being kind to one another and being able to listen, and then being able to share our stories. So that's kind of what we're going this year. We also loved, in the past, our 10th grade advisory usually ran some type of community service, which I think we, especially as educators and people sitting around this table, we really give to others by service. So I think it's a really important quality to teach our students life skill, that we can do great works and serve everyone in our community and somehow. So we're looking for a type of community kindness project that we want each advisory to kind of brainstorm, and after we move through. So there's an end goal again this year, just like last year with the monument. This year we'll be bringing together and then finding their purpose.
And I think just to add on to that, or emphasizing the organic element of this, we're adjusting along the way, and we want this to be successful, to be able to build relationships with all stakeholders in the Holliston community. So that is the biggest goal, and just creating that safe space and environment for everyone.
And I would say the organic happens. Every month we meet with the SALs individually, so it's always like the first Friday of each month, and so tomorrow's our day with them. I usually get weepy, and then she reins me in. I don't know, I'm like a proud parent to them all, but they share such wonderful stories or struggles, and we share together, but it's a really like proud time for us. And then with that feedback, or with the feedback that we get from staff and the individual advisories, we're able to then say, yeah, that didn't really work that well, that wasn't what we expected, and we use that feedback each time to design the next week's lesson. So usually we're like scrambling to just see how much feedback we can get, and because data does give us room to grow. So we're getting better at collecting data and growing from that. Okay, so in the first, this is really quick, because I think we're taking a lot of time, but we get excited. In the first year, we walked in and we had 37 students already picked for us, and so we just like met them on the first day, a half hour before the ninth graders came in, and we're like, this is great, we're excited, we're going to be here with you, and so it really was an exciting year. We started with an activity that we learned from the training we had in the summer that was called Connections, and it didn't mean that every child had to share in their advisory, but the hope was that each week if we practice this at the first 5 minutes, that the teacher advisors would report back to us and say, that child that didn't share for 4 weeks shared today. And just said where they were at, and it was exciting, and so it was like really bringing everyone in that group together, and so it was a practice that we tried. We have all the training, right? Like so much training. We're like, what else can we read? All the things that we do. But this year, the most exciting part was we didn't quite have 100 students, but we did have over 80 applicants, and so it was really exciting. We set up teams of volunteers, SALs that were actually SALs last year's juniors, who wanted to participate in the experience. So they were. We all set out with a list of questions, and the kids picked and said, "Yep, these are great questions. This is what I want to do." And they went through, and boy, they showed some tough skills in their interview. I was like, I'm glad you're not on my interview panel, but they did really a great job, and they would rate the applicants and say, like, we think this student would be great, but not a super strong leader, so maybe a super strong partner would work really well. So we got a lot of good input from the students to like help make the matches.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is the students are building this program with us. We're not driving this to a certain extent, but we want to hear from them what's going to work for them at the end of the day, and making them all, or not making them wanting to all connect together. So just a few things we're adding, group contracts this year. So like, hey, you're in the SAL program, just really setting the bar. I've always been a sports person, but I'm like, this is a team too. You're a SAL. We got jerseys this year. We wear them every Friday, but really just adding that element that what they're doing matters. And I think that's like the biggest thing for them is what they're doing, they're creating something that's making a difference.
And one thing we did add too with the new leadership this year was Welcome Wednesdays. So David List said, you know what, this was a really great practice. We had like a Welcome Monday, and I was like, yeah, I'm a former English teacher. That doesn't work for me. We need alliteration so I can remember. So we picked Wednesdays. So every Wednesday we have a select SALs. There's like a sign-up sheet, and the SALs will rotate through, and they're not with their partners. They're just like whoever gets it, gets it. And they stand at the class hallway entrance and then the main entrance, and they just welcome people in and say hi, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's like, it's all the warm and fuzzy. It's like, it's a nice way to start a Wednesday. And I think that's them. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and just lastly, wrapping it up, data, we're starting to build it, so we only have a year to speak to. So the biggest one we really kind of just wanted to highlight at the beginning of this year. So everyone that's gone through it for phase 1, we really wanted to ask, we had over 200 responses to the survey, which was really awesome. And giving a start of the year survey. But the biggest thing was guessing kind of, 50% kind of, and 33%, 34% yes. To do you feel you have a strong chemistry in your advisory room this year?
And that's taking
we
into
sent this
account
out,
too,
yeah.
there's like a whole bunch of ninth graders that have never been in the room they're in before too, but you know, I think it was good. So it's the kind of is like, well, it's the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Everybody has all.
And we just felt it was powerful that we had that much more buy-in, people wanting to give feedback. So we thought that was important to highlight. And then just continuing the journey for year 2. So we'll see where that goes, but we appreciate everyone just listening, and it's been a labor of love, so we'll see where it goes, but we appreciate everyone tonight listening.
And then we just have 2 very quick.
Yes, these are SALs from last year.
Testimony, sorry.
Last year I was a Holliston high school student. And what this role consists of is every Friday I would have a school freshman that I would help
So kind.
Oh, the Zoom world is not easy.
So
I
kind.
think you have to mute.
I know, I think it's not enough.
It's Amy, John, and Josh,
Okay. But anyway, thank you.
She liked it.
That's my
She had a good time. I feel bad that her face is giant right now. She's not going to be happy about it. We can share the slides with you anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
But thank you again. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And to me, it's a double thank you. It's a thank you to Harry, Taryn, Sarah, all the Sals who participated, all the people who I shared their names on the screen. And, you know, as we said, the safest part of school is the soil. You know, from the soil is where we get where we want to go, right? And, you know, I'm hoping that this new format of like me sharing a little bit, but also bringing voices from the field works, because I think that they can do a way better job to contextualize what this work feels and looks like than I could do in speaking about, you know, the nuts and bolts of a program. So with that, I guess I open up questions, and I would ask that if you have questions maybe that were about advisory, may ask that first so they don't have to stay any longer. But I guess I open it up to any questions.
Sure, go ahead. If you could just step up to one of the microphones.
Just so people can hear you
Yeah.
too. Thank you.
Should I move up here?
Yes.
That'd be good, yeah.
Thank you guys for sharing. I just wanted to bring in a student perspective as I was hearing your presentation, and especially about the data collection. I had a question on what efforts are being taken to continually check in with the freshmen and the sophomore as they're in these earlier stages of high school and starting to engage in advisory. Just because freshman year, from me at least, for my class, wasn't great, but sophomore and junior year, we found it really hard to engage in advisory every week. And I don't recall there being spaces for me to provide feedback on how we were feeling about the lessons that were being taught. And I appreciate the efforts that are being made to communicate with SALs, but I wanted to know specifically, are there steps being taken to ensure that we're actually hearing from students, and it's not just, you know, checking the box saying, are you feeling this chemistry, but rather a place where they can write out their thoughts in full and share that with you guys and know that things will be modified to meet them where they need to be.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I'll jump in, but I think there was several opportunities where it may have been up to the advisory teachers for that execution per se, based on the delivery of the lesson from a higher umbrella standpoint, and then through each advisory session. That's really how we collected the data, I would say. So if you didn't feel that, but we are would love feedback too on different strategies to be able to, kind of make that open space.
Yeah, we did recognize that last year too.
Yeah.
And students who knew us would come and say like, this was a great advisory lesson, or we didn't like this at all. So that was just more like a comment that if they felt comfortable with us. But the other thing that was exciting was this year we started using the classrooms, so like the Google Classrooms for each grade. I know now that you're a senior, now it's not like affecting you, but we put in some activities at the beginning of the year, and so there's always room for private comments in there too. But the SALs and the freshmen particularly are being trained this year too with a little bit more of sensitivity, I guess, like to notice, to recognize, kicking in, to recognize first and foremost when maybe there's a quiet student in there that's not engaging, or maybe the students are like, we hate this, and then for them to give us that feedback as well, but to provide a space as well, like, hey, I notice you're not enjoying this, can we just like write down what you're doing, because we're going to meet with our advisors and really talk about this and find a better solution. But we really love the constructive feedback. A lot of students, parents, and teachers would just email us on the side just to say like, I don't feel comfortable doing this, or my advisory groups aren't working out. We're not a quick fix.
Yeah.
So we would like to kind of research like why it wasn't working out at the time, and then provide some extra help, or if a SAL per se wasn't holding up their end of the bargain, then unfortunately it is like a job, and we would have to like dismiss this out and work a little bit better to find a partner that would work better in that place. So those things are going on. I know probably like in your advisory, you weren't seeing all of that because you're in the advisory attending, but we do have the supports, and we actually are excited to try to get some training for ourselves this year as well, and then for the teachers as well to have kind of like a handbook to like support them and say like these are the areas where we want to highlight.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we're looking to continue to explore tools and avenues to increase the means of communication with the entire building.
And just another question about the logistics of advisory itself. Obviously, the concern is when it's being held during our study block, that's generally when teachers are the most available to receive help. And there were several times when me or my friends or my peers in general weren't able to receive that extra academic help because we had advisory going on, or my advisory teacher would dismiss me to then go meet with that other teacher because we knew we weren't really going to be doing anything. And so either way, there's this issue, and I wanted to understand what's being done to combat that.
That's a little disturbing to me. So we see advisory, and I know last year's leadership saw this as well as now the new leadership, that advisory time is actually like sacred time. It's the one time where we can actually check in and with an SEL lens, really work with students and make that safe place. We have DSB, is what you're talking about, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And we've always had an advisory one day a week. So I don't know if it was during the COVID times, like during the remote blocks, we had it on Mondays, and we did it on Mondays when Ms. Lasher ran advisory. And the census was that this wasn't a really great day to do that because students are coming in from the weekend and have a lot of questions and they want to meet with teachers. So we moved it back to Friday over a general vote. But the other thing is that teachers don't have meeting times during advisory except for fine arts and fine and performing arts have teacher meetings on that Friday, and they don't have an advisory.
Amanda, do you have a question?
Yeah, but there, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, did you ask teachers like a preference if they wanted to have a freshman advisory? Because I know last year, from my personal experience as well as experience from like other friends, that the quality of their advisory was partially dependent on the teacher specifically. So some teachers were a lot more involved in their advisory, and other teachers kind of left it up to the SALs, or just for advisory with those SALs, they kind of just left students to their.
So we see first, like there's kind of two parts to your question, so this is great, and then you can add on that. The administration has always sent out a Google form at the end of every year or in the spring, kind of right before people are deciding new courses are coming in and how many classes are we going to have for like incoming freshmen. The teachers are asked, would you like to participate in the advisory program, and do you have a preferred grade? Do you have an advisory now? Do you want to keep them? Or would you like a senior homeroom? So teachers elect to do this. And that's always a choice, right? Coming in, they kind of, like as we transitioned last year back into the advisory, most teachers were assigned their same advisory to stay with them. So this year I know that the only advisories that weren't like reassigned to their old teacher is because we had some staff that left. And so new teachers were assigned to those because they were not given a chance to like say, oh, I want a ninth grade advisory, and we were kind of like, we need to know who the ninth grade advisors are right away because we try to match ourselves with that. And then...
Yeah, and the one thing I just want to add is coming off of last year and reimagining the program, actually last Friday's session was around, we showed an example of a video of what advisory is. I don't want to say a standard, but what it looks like at other schools, that I don't think it's been like that in the past year for a while, where we're trying to reimagine that program. So last week, we actually just showed a video to get everyone just feedback and brainstorm. Hey, this is what one school's doing. How could this work here? What are the obstacles we could see? And how can we come together? So we actually want to reflect off that tomorrow's session. And we actually got some feedback from teachers that really appreciated that. So again, it's working together to kind of figure out that overall solution.
So just to add on to what Sarah was saying, and also to bring it back to my earlier point, is there anything in place that's going to, I guess, get rid of this obstacle of students not being able to receive academic help on Fridays? If they had a question on Thursday night's homework, or they have a test on Monday, how are they going to receive that academic help on Fridays if they need it, because students are going to?
So again, it's not time, there is not a DSD during that time, so my suggestion would be email the teacher.
And then connect with your
Connect.
teacher and make the connection, or look to schedule additional time where it's needed. But advisory is supposed to be that advisory block for a reason. So I think it's just in terms of something that has always been on the schedule in terms of.
I guess what I would say, and this is a direct answer to that, but Taryn and Sarah's role is to imagine and work with students on how to best utilize advisory space. I think the question you're asking is even a bigger question, which is, if students need supports, how do they best receive that? And I honestly think that's probably a question to be brought to the administrative team to think about. If there's a big need of students who need support, how do we connect that, right? So, not to say that they can't answer, but I think that in one space, as a school, we ask them to envision what that space is. But the question of structure, I think that's a question that probably is best situated to bring that to Mr. List and his admin team to think about, are there better ways to support students when that needs, you know what I mean? And I think that this is a trajectory, right? So what we're hearing is, A, this work isn't perfect, hasn't been perfect, but we're building a trajectory where kids are getting behind it, right? And the goal is to get better every year, right? I know I don't aim for perfection, I know they don't. So A, feedback is essential, but also I think what we're hearing from kids is we're headed in the right direction. The question will be, how do we continue to get feedback to kind of improve every year? Make sense?
Yeah, my question is actually similar to what Sarah asked, which is I'm wondering sort of what about teacher buy-in. I've been a part of several advisories as a teacher myself, and it's tough. I know some teachers are like really, really into it, like you two and me. I love, like, I could run advisories all day. I love doing that stuff, and others are like uncomfortable. So you did answer part of that with the form and how that's selected. How do you sort of, when there are there planned lessons each week that the teachers receive, and if so, like, is it like they get that email at 10 a.m. and then they have to do it that day, or is it like, do they have plenty of time? Do they have agency over what they're comfortable sharing and not? Or how does that all work?
Just jumping in, so we, we're laughing, who's gonna jump in, but we send an email out every Thursday. We send some type of guiding course, so to speak. We have a slide deck by month that we add to with leading guiding activities. We always emphasize if something's working differently for that advisor, they can make it their own. So if you're feeling that you want to do something else with that, your advisory class in terms of building relationships, like all the means to what is most comfortable for you.
I mean, I know we have particular teachers that said, like, I really know these kids. They had an 11th grade advisory last year. I really know these kids, and right now I think they really just want to come together and build this puzzle and talk, and that's what we're going to do. Are we going to be in trouble because we didn't do the lesson? We're like, no. The lesson is there always as a guideline. Some teachers really want us more of a scripted, like, what activities can we do? I'm just meeting these kids, like, and so they can build off that. The lesson is always there as a suggestion. Not a end-all be-all. And so, I mean, we have awesome, amazing educators, so they can recognize when this perfect slide deck that we love or whatever isn't going to work, and there's some other situation going on in the room, and we rely on their expertise. They can recognize what works and what doesn't.
And have you had, like, a lot of feedback from teachers on how they feel about the advisory program and how it's going?
So I would say, like, when we ask for feedback, we generally get a lot, like, it always, like, it's in any class, right? Like, you have a lot of loudspeakers who will always be the first people to, like, either cheer on something or say, nope, this is where you made an error. And that's good. It's really awesome, and we go through all of the stuff, and as a matter of fact, like, tomorrow we're going to go through some of the responses with ourselves as training. Like, this is what we've heard from different advisories. I think sometimes not everyone responds, and so we're saying to people, we really need your feedback. That's how we can grow from it. And it's happy feedback and sometimes, like, more negative feedback. It's all valid, and we need it. We need to become better, you know. And not everybody signed up to be an advisor. for the advisory. So not every teacher in the school.
And I guess I just would say that for any of this work, we have to invest in it, right? We believe in it. And I think that's the piece that I think we're trying to move towards, is like investing in this, not only as them as advisors, but in this work. One of the things we identified was that there has really never really been a true training for our educators, right? So I've spoken to people who say, like, I love talking with kids. I'm not always sure how to roll out lessons, right? And we would imagine that necessarily teachers might, but for instance, just because I'm, let's say, a school counselor doesn't mean I know how to run a classroom, right? So developing even a training series for our educators who are advisors so they feel comfortable, or if they need support, that wasn't something that had been done before, right? So we're like building also these supports for our educators so that they can kind of grow into that space, and equally support for our students and for ourselves so they can kind of live up to that as well. Because leadership isn't just you're born with, right? Sometimes we also need to kind of think about how we support to build that that courage, that confidence in their own voice.
Thank you, good question.
Any other?
I'm sorry, I have just one. As just sort of more of a process question, how do you decide what students get chosen for what advisory? Like, what's your rubric, or do you have a survey for the kids, and so you can group them in a place where they actually have a safe space where they feel comfortable to talk? Because all this is for naught if those kids don't feel like that's a space where they can do that.
I totally agree.
And can they switch if it doesn't work out?
Right. And can they, yes.
Can they switch if it's not a place they feel comfortable?
So we actually haven't had any of these switch this year. We have had people partner up, like say like, this advisory isn't really working, can we move to these two classrooms together because we feel it's working better than as a whole group. We did have that happen last year. I've also had students, like, we do give them a survey and we say, like, before you leave for the year, before we make our final choices where we're going to place anybody, can you, if there's a teacher that you really feel connected with, I know in the past, like, as being an advisor, I've had students that were in my advisory, became SALs, and then I was lucky enough to say, hey, could I get them back in my classroom? We already have this great relationship. And the student said, yeah, I want to be in your classroom too. So it has to work both ways, I think, in order for it to work. But we had students request to be with teachers that they already had a relationship with, so then they would begin with their ninth graders with the teacher that they had been really close with. And sometimes it doesn't work out that well. Like sometimes a teacher will request students and the students didn't request the teacher. I'm going to honor the student's choice in that matter because, like, that's great that that teacher felt really close, but that student felt closer to somebody else. So we've also done it that way. And last year we had a few times where SALs requested to be in a siblings advisory in order to support their sibling who might have had a really struggling situation. And we did allow it. This year we kind of said, you know what, I think it might be okay to recognize that maybe there's a student that's struggling and then not partner a sibling in there because for whatever dynamics that we don't know that that would be successful. So it's always kind of like on a case-by-case basis, but we do listen to the SALs and you know, they'll say like, I want to partner with this SAL because we're besties. And then this year we said like, that's great, but you have to also understand when you walk into a ninth grade advisory that if you're besties, it's a little bit intimidating to the ninth graders that don't maybe know anybody. If they're new to the district and they see you as being like besties and now they're intimidated. So we're cautious about everything.
Yeah, I think the one thing to add on, just like I relate to my students in business, you're not always going to like everyone you work with, but you learn to work together. And if it's being picked at random at the beginning of their freshman experience, now that it's kind of being phased out, obviously coming back from COVID. So I think moving forward, things may look a little bit differently, but they'll be able to, especially this year's freshman class, be able to really experience that organic feeling. If you don't know everyone, that's okay, but that's why you're there, to work together and build those relationships. So.
Great, thank you. And I do have a follow-up for Jerry, but if you guys want to leave,
Thank you.
let you go.
Thanks for coming about your
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thanks so much.
And Jerry, I'm going to keep this really quick because we are getting late, and it's really more of a request for a future topic of conversation. But under Safe and Supportive Schools, obviously, you know, we had another instance of hate speech on school grounds this past week, and I'm more interested. I mean, we don't know if it's a student still under investigation. I don't want to talk about the incident itself, but I would like to understand a little bit about, we put out statements, we talk about how, it's unacceptable, hate has no place, all that. What actions are we taking? And again, I'm not looking for you to give us a real sort of detailed response now, but maybe just a topic that we can have you back for a future conversation about. I just think it's really important so that the community and everyone kind of understands, not just what we're saying, but what are we doing? How are we instilling or trying to, instill, values in our students?
Yeah, no, I'd welcome that, and not necessarily to get into that right now, but I think that in any response, we're talking about multiple people, right? So we're talking about building leadership, educators in school, counselors, et cetera. So I think, in any decisions, what probably would, at some point I share is, what would be the process that schools go through when things like this happen? How do they support students? How do they invest? Like the whole piece that goes into that, because every situation is different. But the process that schools go through to investigate something, is a similarity, right?
No, I'm not talking about the investigation. I'm talking about like sort of what actions are we taking to sort of educate children about the harms of these type of things, like the reasons behind, how are we trying to prevent them from happening in the future? We can talk about the investigation, but I'm less interested in that, but more about how do we sort of prevent or minimize the.
Can I just say one thing? I mean, I think I don't want us to jump to the assumption that it was a student. It happened on school grounds.
I said that to begin with. I understand that, but we've had issues in schools of this before.
Correct, but I'm just saying that's why the police are trying to support with this. Okay. I will say though, one of the things Sharon and I talked about is, regardless of whether it happened as a community issue or one of our students was involved in anything here, today I reached out to Rabbi Mimi to say, Jail and I have come up with some ideas, like regardless, this is always an educational opportunity, no matter how it happens or when it happens. So this is something we wanted to vet with Rabbi Mimi and also with our administrators. If something happens in the community or a neighboring community, can we still bring that in as a learning lesson with students? And what could it look like? Could it be a moment of silence? Could it be, I actually emailed Taryn and Sarah today before this meeting a while ago, and the middle school and high school principal, because I wonder when we send something out to parents, do students even know? Because I always say, please talk with your students about this in case, and then we also need to bring it back, well, if students are upset, we need to maybe think about how can we support them in school, whether it's an outside event or an inside event. Maybe other ways to bring them into, do they have access to a counselor additionally, like right after incidents happen? So these are all things that we're exploring and want to kind of vet, thinking of advisory. Is this another opportunity to educate students about anti-Semitic propaganda and things like that, especially at the middle school and high school level, where they should be able to, what do you think we can do to help out in the community as well, and work together and partner with the community?
I guess what I would just say is that here's what I can say until I do a proper presentation, is that our schools are doing work to educate students on issues of hate. The middle school have been doing it for at least 3 years. We've shared about some of that in the past. They call them safe supportive lessons that have been happening in our middle schools. They're actually, some of their peer leadership work is actually now focused on that, where students are actually providing feedback on those lessons and delivering lessons. The high school's done some work. So, one of the pieces is, yes, I'll come and do, we'll share out, right, in a formal way around like what's happening, but there is education happening. Even, in the spaces of, engaging in literacy around different families and different structures, like there is work happening across the district. But what I'll say is the other spaces, that's also why I presented on that DEI work that needs to happen too. Because the other piece is we have schools doing a lot of what I think is positive work and addressing this work. But also we want to align to make sure we're all headed in the same direction. So this is exactly also why I shared the creation of having to create this leadership team that also focused around that across our schools, so we can help our schools augment what they're already doing.
To be clear, I wasn't suggesting we weren't doing anything, but just trying to understand.
No, I wanted to actually do it because this, not only being a public meeting, I know there's people watching. So I wanted to kind of let families know that there is work happening.
Great.
And Jeriel, we talked a lot about how it needs, the advisory work is wonderful. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, that everyone's doing, that you're facilitating. But how can we support you and the other leaders, student leaders, teacher leaders, in doing DEI work in the schools? And maybe, it seems like another area in which folks would really benefit from training.
Yeah.
So what kind of, you don't need to tell me what kind of work that's happening, because I know there's the ADL lessons, there's the peer leadership stuff that's going on, but how can we continue to really support that work and really make it a goal of ours to keep folks really aware that this has to be a town and a district priority to make sure all folks are feeling supported in our schools and in our town.
And I think the other piece to wrestle with is how do we get better at sharing what we're doing, right? Because I think that's even my own personal challenge. Right, I could sit here and come one day and present on the essay on mental health work, and I can come and do another day on DI work, right? So how do you share that? Right? I think that's a challenge. How do you share it in a deeper sense so people can hear what's happening? It also doesn't take an hour or more, right? Because every school is doing something. Every school's engaged in this work. We've done professional development that we've shared in the past, but in retrospect, 3 years from now, right? Something that was shared 2 years ago is not top of mind, right? And a lot of this work, as you know, right, in education, this is trajectory work, right? Like PD we do today should then build off of what we do next year. But as school committee members or as a community, how do you know what that trajectory is, right? And how do we share that? I think that's a challenge, for districts like our size to think about how do we share in a way that people can wrestle with and see that trajectory that doesn't take a 2-hour PD presentation. So I also welcome the feedback on how to do that.
And I think it's always, we're never done, right? I mean, that's the bigger part. How do we get better? Kind of like Sarah and Tara were talking about with advisory. How do we get better at this work and build the capacity of our staff so that they are able to have some of these difficult conversations too? Because not everybody feels comfortable leaning into this work, and we got it better at that as well.
And I just wanted to say that I really appreciate that you keep talking about breaking down the silos, because I think that was something that was very prevalent before you came. They were just different silos of information or different programs that we were doing across the district, and the fact that you're trying to unify that so we have common language and common supports across the district is really, really important, I think. So I just wanted to thank you for that, because I definitely see that difference since before you came here. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I think so.
Ariel was an important addition to our leadership team for sure.
Yes. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you want to skip policy?
I'm going really quick.
Yep.
The policy, let's see.
Student discipline, it's a good topic.
It is, right? It's too bad the students aren't here for this, but anyway. They did get the agenda ahead of time.
They got the agenda ahead of time, so they knew when to
Well,
get out.
and we're at the point where, so this was actually a policy I thought we were done with, but I guess things kind of over the summer, and I won't get into my own personal story, but it got kind of lost in the weeds, so I apologize for that.
That's fine.
So I'm not reading this whole policy again. It's just a revision. We had a question the last time that we spoke about this. I think it was June. I apologize again. And it was about, on page 4, regarding expulsion and that assault on a member of the educational staff. I believe it was Dawn who was suggesting, is that a mandatory about staff, educational staff for students, and that's the law, so that's why it has to be written in that way. I can't change it. So that was that. And then one other thing that was added was at the very, very bottom about policy definitions. So we have so that people understand what restorative justice means and things like that. So that is added as a document. It obviously would be like a fluid document, but it's on there too. So and so there's no other changes that we made from the last time that we met, other than just to confirm that that point about expulsion.
Any comments or questions? Do we need a vote to
Yes.
accept the amendments? Okay,
Yes, please,
so
as presented.
I'll accept the motion to accept the amendments to policy JIC, student discipline.
Seconded?
All in favor? Carries.
Thank you. And then the other one is, this is more of like a housekeeping policy that MASC just suggested that we had. We have a policy around admitting students. This one is about whether we would deny, what reasons we would deny students. So this is a first read, so I have to read the whole thing, but it's not long. And we can, I'll take questions, and then if people want to just send me feedback, we can talk about it in the next time. All right, so policy JHD, exclusions and exemptions from school attendance. Denial of admission. Denial of admission means the withholding of the privilege of enrolling in a school of the Holliston Public Schools. The Holliston School Committee affirms its position that it shall not discriminate in the admission of any child on the basis of race, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, disability, age, genetic information, active military veteran status, marital status, familial status, pregnancy or pregnancy-related condition, homelessness, ancestry, ethnic background, national origin, or any other category protected by state or federal law, athletic performance, academic performance, or proficiency in the English language. There's this asterisk. Race is to include traits historically associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture, hair type, hair length, and protective hairstyles. The following shall be the grounds for denial of admission to school or for diversion to an appropriate alternative program. Graduation from the 12th grade or HPS transition program of any school or receipt of any document evidencing completion of the equivalent of a secondary curriculum. Failure to meet the requirements of age for beginning school as determined by the HSC as provided in Massachusetts general laws. Failure to meet the residency requirements and HPS has opted not to participate in the school choice law. Failure to comply with the provisions of the Massachusetts school entry immunization law. And there is legal references at the bottom. Mass General Law, Chapter 76, Section 12, Chapter 76, Section 12A, Chapter 76, 12B, and 7615, and 603 CMR, Section 26, or sorry, Chapter 26. Okay, so again, just a first read, so.
Yep. Any comments on that?
Any initial thoughts?
I deleted a period and it says.
I see that, I know, I think it got added by mistake.
But other than that, I don't have anything. Okay? So we don't need to vote on it?
No, we do
First read?
not. Yep, thank you.
Wonderful. All right, moving on to central office updates.
Yeah, so the one thing, which is a very good thing, or hopeful thing, that I wanted to share today is Keith and I and Travis Ahern and James Keast and Bobby Kadra attended the senior study yesterday for 2 hours with our MSBA visitors. There were 5 of them. I have to say it was the first time I've done different parts of building projects, but I've never done a senior study, so I was not sure what to expect or where we're going. We did have a document that they gave us, and we meant to bring copies, so we'll actually send them electronically to you just so you can see what they shared with us. But the team was very interested and asked really good questions and really dug in and pushed us to think a little further. We were encouraged by the questions that they were asking. I can't say where it will take us, but we felt very optimistic and positive by basically what they were asking, what they were sharing with us. They seemed to be very interested in our school and this particular project. Like I said, I can't promise you it's going to take us to the next step, but there were 63 projects that had been applied for, and it was narrowed down to 32, and then they were doing 23 senior studies out of those 32 because 9 of them they had done recently enough that they didn't need to, is what they shared with us. A couple of things that we learned through this process were one of the things that Keith had always thought that because we have a field house, that if we happen to do a rebuild of the high school, we may want to keep that field house because that would not be part of the money coming back to us. And they brought up the point, which I wondered too, because I just took it for face value because Keith is my building expert. But typically a field study, if it is a separate field house is a separate building, then it would not be. Ours is what houses our wellness classes, and we have PE classes in there all day long, plus after school classes. So it's not a separate community field house. Therefore, it's our gym.
Oh, nice.
So that could then become part of the building project, which was really good to hear. But they did say that they've had places where they have a field house and a gym. Well, the field house is like the community piece. Mm-hmm. Ours does become a community piece, but first and foremost, it's part of our wellness program.
So the net of this, that would be then included
Correct.
in the
Correct.
What about the auditorium, though?
Well, right now, if we were to keep, there are 2 things that could happen. We believe, they didn't get into the specifics of the numbers, but when we did have an architect who happens to be a parent of the district give us some information, they went through the formula with us and believed we could get 750-ish seats.
Yeah, between 7 and 7.
If we did a new,
725.
if we've got the building
This
project.
is the 9 we have now.
Right, so if we decided we couldn't go down to 750-ish and wanted to stay with the 904, 914, then no, it's not going to be included, but that's a decision we'd make at that time. We're so far from that decision, but yes. that is-
okay.
But then the other piece that they wanted us to dig into, and that I would like to bring back to you at the next meeting to put on the agenda for a potential vote. There's a lot of ways to strengthen your application, and they will still take this information if we can get things to them pretty soon. So one of the things that they asked is about, what about your enrollment pre-K to 8? Are you concerned that you're going to have bubbles and move up? Well, we did talk about enrollment and some concerns with the future for a couple of reasons. We know that pre-K is coming down the pike. If we go with fully funded pre-K, we're probably going to need 3 more classrooms, we think, at the Placentino building. We are maxed out, right?
Yeah.
So something's going to give here. We do foresee we're going to see our enrollment has been pretty level. We've had some bumps in, like some grade level, like is it grade 4 right now is the big one, or grade 5?
2.
Oh, sorry, but we have one. We have had some bubbles as well. Our overall population has been fairly fluid. However, we are seeing a programmatical need with our high needs kids that are coming in. Jessica was talking about that as well.
Right.
So we're running out of space if we have to build these programs like at the high school already. So over time, we believe that we could outgrow the lower campus, and we have nothing that we can do there. We're putting out, if we do get to a new high school, it's going to be a long time away before we're doing any of those projects. We just did those really recently. So we are worried about that. So they brought up 2 potential ideas that we can be thinking of. If we foresee this is going to happen, some districts have gone with, if they outgrew their lower level, would you want to build a preschool at the high school, which would then become part of that building project?
The older kids can work there.
Correct.
I know, right?
Which then you can have an early childhood program, right? However, that doesn't create as much of a space need, because let's just say that's 3 classrooms,
We
right?
don't have that at the high school either.
Right.
No.
That being said, the other possibility is if we foresee that we're going to outgrow the pre-K building and have to potentially move grade 2 to Miller, grade 5 to middle,
Yeah.
and potentially bring grade 8 up to the high school.
Yeah.
That's also showing a long-term plan that this district may very well need.
Yeah.
And whether we say that now, let's just say we say, yes, we think that in the next 5 years, we may need to shift our population up. If we get to the project, if that helps us get feasibility and move this project forward, it doesn't lock us in.
Right.
So anything we say on this application that we think, it's an unknown, right? When we think that might happen, but it definitely strengthens if you're looking at it, not just how is the high school necessary, but how is this going to help the district pre-K through 12? So they definitely, would you agree that was a very strong focus of the conversation about anything that might be not just a high school, but also serve a bigger need in the community, definitely can give you a leg up.
It was just one of the things that we had added, if you remember this year, about that there could be an enrollment issue with the high school.
That's why they dug into that.
And so, again, we affectionately called it the Boudet maneuver, if you all remember, of moving 8th grade up here. But as much as and things we had actually discussed internally since then, as much as the idea of moving pre-K creates certain opportunities, there are also certain challenges with it, because remember, our preschool program currently is basically based around a special education piece. Well, those special education teachers can't do pre-K and K1 and 2 then, as we are currently configured. Add to that, what does that do to Montessori? Because again, Montessori for pre-K and K is a 3-graded classroom. That can't move either, or they all move up. We have certain complicating factors that make us a little different. Not the special education piece, but the Montessori piece. One thing that we'd also talked about as an enticement for the 8th grade piece would be something with regards to the outflow of students to other schools, other public schools, such as Key for Norfolk. Well, a student who gets indoctrinated, so to speak, into the high school participates in sports, because if you're in 8th grade in your high school, they can play high school sports. As they get indoctrinated, it's arts here or clubs here. The fact is that they may choose to stay as opposed to, matriculating out to a different district.
I went to 8th grade at this school.
to rebuild, right?
But one of the things we're trying, and there's a lot of things that would go into, right? Again, this is,
when we come to it.
that, right, we don't have to even think about that right now, but the point is, it could strengthen our application to move us forward and gives us time to determine what the long-term needs of the district are.
So you would be looking for a potential vote on what, a supplemental submission?
So what we would do is write a letter, and that the school committee voted, similar to like I had to send them a letter on the vote before, and it had to be certified by the chair. So you would vote that whether it's a preschool potential move or an enrollment shift, and we would want to cite the reasons why we think we might need this coming forward. And I know that you have concerns about 8th grade. There are also, some districts do 8th grade as like a separate wing, but it opens up the opportunities, because we're trying to develop, one of the things we're locked right now with the blueprint we have here is we're trying to build more endorsement programs. Those opportunities are limited because right now Mr. Liss is trying to develop the Innovative Pathways Grant. But then where are we going to put these new programs? So if we could open up more pathways and get more opportunities, and then allow 8th graders to access those because they're in the high school, it just, to me, we had a concern last year. We had the highest number for a while of the Keefe Tech students leaving. But maybe if they had those hooks in and open up their band, chorus, things that they can't necessarily do in the same level as they can in a high school setting, even the vocational offerings. One of the things we talked about was allied health or biomedical. That's something that the students here have been asking for the last couple of years. Again, when you build a new school, you can envision whatever you want. And if you build it, they will come and they will stay. I mean, that's something we want to maintain our students in district as well. What else today? So I think, Keith, you already talked about a lot of the other things I had down here, but...
The thing that they need to hear from the school committee is that if we are anticipating a potential issue with enrollments, and again, we're out of space in Placentino. I have no vacant classrooms there. So even if we wanted to do something else creative, institute another special ed program, I don't have space. It won't happen in Placentino. So when you look at it, that is the place where we need the space now. But if we were going to look at a potential enrollment issue within this district, they would want to hear from you on whether your plans at this time would be to do a pre-K at the high school or grade 8 at the high school. That's what they would want to hear. So when they consider our application, they know what they're talking about or what the plans would be if it was going to go down that path.
So let's put together a letter. We can talk about that. I would, we obviously need to talk about what moving 8th grade to the high school means cost-wise as far as the building cost. But I mean,
and I don't think we even have to worry about any of that right now. We're just saying that we are thinking that this could be a possibility, and whether you do it or not, that doesn't matter right now. So that's the news the community would need. No one is making any decisions, even if we get to that point. We have multiple years to even consider and multiple years of data gathered before any decision be made. But it does strengthen the application. That's really the most important part.
Just that we know that we're going to have an enrollment issue. Whichever way we're going to have
very likely going to need to do something.
Yes.
And if you can, if it's
solution to
yes,
deal with
right.
the enrollment, but
Correct.
beyond that, you don't really need to be much more specific.
No.
Yeah.
And if the high school rebuild or whatever it becomes not just a high school need, but a district need, again, that's a very stronger community message, and MSBA hears that message as well.
Okay, great.
And then one other quick thing is that I had reached out to Senator Spilka's office. I know that, I've talked to her before, and she knew that we had been writing the SOI. And Karen Edelman-Foster said to me, what can we do to help? Do you want us to write a letter? I said, that would be great. So today, Karen sent me the letter from Karen Spilka, and I sent that over to our site coordinator, whatever. Yeah. Katie, that was to Christopher, I think it is. Anyhow, everything helps, right? And what I explained to her is obviously Senator Spilka's endorsement also is a strong message to the community, because they also want to make sure, and they asked Travis this question, if you got to feasibility, do you think the town's going to buy in? So we were, he spoke very eloquently about that, about where we are, and we feel a very strong sense that the community is ready and waiting with bated breath for this, right? And that we would be able to get strong support for the building project.
Could you share, Karen, could you share Senator Smoka's letter
Sure.
with us too? And then did you get a sense of when the senior studies would be completed, the timeline for that?
So I asked if there's anything supplemental that we can be sharing you through, and actually Travis sent us something today. He's going to put together a letter talking about the 40B, that was the other piece, 40B housing. They asked about growth in the town, and he did foresee with the 40B need in town that also could be an enrollment bubble as well. So he put together a letter. They're going to accept that letter from him. And anything that they would require from us, they said, you should get it in before the end of October. And that's why that October 19th date, to have a vote from you and a letter ready to go, we really important.
And I also meant among the other schools where they were conducting the senior studies. Do we have a sense of when they're going to be done?
I think she said they were trying to wrap up next week. So that's why, like, the end of the month, they probably won't accept any other pieces.
Right.
Because then they're going to be voting in early December.
It was December 12th or 13th meeting. I don't remember which number it was now. That's the decision the board will vote at that point in time. They say we may hear earlier, just because they don't want it to be a surprise either way. But again, it's
government making decisions before the decision is made.
Yeah, and again, like I said, we have no idea if this is going to
Right.
go anywhere, but it was a very positive.
We support them. We support them.
So, Keith, was this a different meeting than the last time that they came to do?
Yes, yes. Last time was kind of a meet and greet and kind of a lot of high fives and how are you doing and stuff like that, and just kind of a general walkthrough.
Yeah.
This they came with some very specific questions.
Okay.
But I think they asked every district some specific questions regarding our application.
Right.
And then some hints on kind of things to do. Which was the things that we were very surprised to hear on how to either improve our application this time or even for the future. It was helpful. It actually was. And again, very positive. I mean, you know.
And Katie recorded all the rooms we went into and different.
Yeah, she used to a GoPro and walked around, and we pointed out different things, and it was fine. And everybody during the whole tour, I mean, different groups of people were talking to different people, so it was.
Was it a different group that came in terms of did you?
I've never seen those people before.
Completely different. Okay.
One was
And it was a hot day, and they were able to be taken up on the second floor.
Oh yes, we felt that heat coming off the blacktop roof, and they very much noticed that.
Since they picked October for their senior studies.
And having a board member there was something, again, the last time we didn't have a board member there.
No, yeah.
So.
Okay.
These kids have been here for 5 hours.
I don't want to mislead anyone to think that this is like going to happen anyway, but it was definitely positive, felt reassuring and hopeful at least.
It's actually a pretty good start.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Very good initiative.
All right. Dr. Bernard.
Two very brief announcements. On yesterday, we had two very exciting events. We had our Walk to School event. Tina Hines, Dr. Kuska, Jess Beatty, and myself went on the walks. A lot of fun, had a good turnout. Dr. Kuska was able to post on social media. Last night, we also had Placentino's Potluck Family Night for multilingual learners. We probably had over 60 people there, I would venture to guess. We had pizza for everybody, and then families brought whatever they wanted to contribute. A lot of kids had so much fun. They made their bilingual superpower masks, so they were all very excited. So it was a lovely evening.
Cute. Thank you. Mr. Boudet.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but Winter Street's having some transportation issues.
Wait, there's construction going on in Holliston?
I think it's like a unique thing for this year.
And traffic too?
You think? We're currently
Freaked out my kids this morning.
where the first culvert's being done. We have a fairly simple route to get around it. No stops have been impacted. The next culvert stops are going to be impacted. I mean, it's just there's places we can't get to that students will either have to walk north on Winter or south on Winter. In some cases, a significant amount of distance, but there is nothing we can do because there are no places to turn around a bus.
So will this be done before winter?
This will be done. Winter will be done certainly before spring. Just passing and moving on.
Which spring? Because winter's been under construction for...
Construction be done?
They anticipate, I spoke with the GC who's doing the work, they expect the first one to be done in 2 weeks, the second one will be more complicated. He said he'll call me sometime next week with an update on the first one, but the second one is more complicated.
Are a lot of Miller kids going to be affected after daylight savings?
Yes. I have children being affected on all 3 runs.
So walking down Winter Street in the dark?
No cars will be going, though.
No, seriously.
No, seriously, no cars will be going.
The cars won't be
allowed.
Oh, because cars literally can't go that way.
Literally can't go.
Okay.
You can't get beyond short or little, whichever one's...
It's still not ideal, but you know.
Yeah, so just don't bother everybody.
Case though, can we get
I can't hear,
So
sorry.
can we have HPD support the initial week if that's the case, especially because it sounds like it's going to coincide right around daylight savings time where it's early, it's dark, it's new, they're walking on that road.
They'll have to go both directions, though.
Maybe
I can certainly reach out to Travis and see if he's willing to put details on for this project. I don't know, but again,
at least initially to
it'll be
make sure
2
people-
different directions because
and make sure these kids have it down safely.
And hopefully parents can, rather than carpool, they can walk pool. I don't know what you call it.
They can drive south on there. If they have to head south, they'll be able to get out of there, to get home. So, that was one thing. This afternoon, James Keast and I, oops, sorry.
Guys.
Okay, I just didn't know if there was something else happening on the first thing. This afternoon, James Keast and I did a walkthrough of the Woodland Street campus with a number of people from a HVAC design firm, and we'll hear more first what the cost would be to put together a plan for us. With different options, and then we'd have an idea about proposed costs of the units, of the solution as well. But the first step is they have to determine what it's going to take for them to put it together architecturally, and that'll be the first cost to see how much that's going to be. We really don't know. The police station, James told me, was around $20,000, and we're substantially bigger than that, so it may be a big number. So
And that's are they going to give us multiple options as far as like
Yes.
every room?
Yes.
Versus, okay.
And mini split system, Keith, or
There's
also
all sorts of
central?
possibilities there, and we did speak about geothermal to make an old friend of yours happy.
The chair of the finance committee will
The chair of the finance, he'll be very happy. He won't be happy with the answer, but that's fine.
And again, this is just to get ideas of what's actually possible and associated costs.
Correct.
It's not promises for anything. We just need to understand this more.
Just so anyone watching at home understands, we're talking about the heating, not heating, but the at the Woodland Street campus at Minnetonka.
Yes, so, that was that piece.
It's great that meeting happened, or that walkthrough happened so quickly.
And then the last one is I did get the results back from the analysis of the playgrounds at the elementary campus. I met with our maintenance director, Bobby Cager. We're going to talk about what the things were in writing. We're going to walk the campus, probably not tomorrow, but or walk the playgrounds beginning of next week and kind of talk about what plans we can do. Some of the things are just not doable. For example, on the Placentino pre-KK playground, some of the elements are, this type of element has to be X number of inches away from another element. There's 2 elements there that we basically have to take out of a playground that doesn't have that many elements. So it's, again, it's new standards and stuff that has nothing to do with anything more than, you guys like dancing. It has nothing more to do than just, again, the way it was designed initially, 25 years ago. So.
But we did have the mulch put down.
Yeah, we did add another 100 yards of mulch in there. We partnered with the Highway Division, or I should say the Grounds Division, and getting that in, and then helping us spread it out. So that's happened. So we're gradually moving forward. Didn't have to rent equipment for a change. So
On the pre-KK playground walkthrough, and talking about how you'd have to remove pieces where there's so very little there right now, was there also looking into any level of expansion and like an understanding of where those pipes and other things that might, and I know we have fields there, but I'm just talking minimally, like we've got the Gaga pit, we still have some space.
We didn't, this was an inspection of the actual equipment that is there. It's not, he's not a design guy to build a new. So it's different specialties. So we're working through it.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess just keep surprised when you have some numbers or data or something, we can schedule a budget subcommittee meeting or whatever and start working through all that.
That's it.
That's it? Okay. All right, so reports from subcommittees. Does communications have anything?
Communications is meeting this coming Wednesday, and we're going to be discussing the newsletter and also the creation of office hours for.
Great. And I want to, well, it's not technically from communications itself. In our folder, I put a sort of an invite. If you guys want to take a look, and is that everyone okay with that? Is that?
Yes, I feel like I have one comment.
Okay.
So cute.
I did it all myself.
That's great.
So we'll get that sent out tomorrow so that everyone's officially invited.
Good job, Dan.
Thank you. I'm just a communicating master. All right. So policy.
Our next meeting is Tuesday, October 17th at 11:30. Invited Tina Hine to come to talk about Safe Routes to School policy, as well as to talk with David List and Matt Baker and about a number of different issues, but one is to talk about any impacts that we could see in terms of if we made changes to the calendar, because we need to start having that kind of conversation, and especially as we're talking about how do we address, like you're talking about the AC units and things like that, how do we address it from a calendar perspective, potentially, or pilot it from a perspective, but then what's the impacts? So how is that going to change scheduling or athletics, or if at all? I don't even know, so I'm just inviting to kind of have that an open conversation.
Okay, that's great. Dawn left during her moment of spotlight, so we'll just superintendent eval. We don't have anything, but you're planning on presenting goals next meeting, right? And
well, the 19th is going to be the school goals and the district goals, not my personal goals.
Okay.
Usually I do my goals after that, if that's because.
Well, let's just coordinate something we can, I guess, we'll have a meeting of eval for.
Right after or no one?
Well, when do you expect to present? You feel the sort of.
What's the next meeting? The November
3rd or 2nd? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think should be. Yeah.
Okay.
We can talk about budget.
We'll talk about budget. So we had a pretty robust discussion about the temperature issues at the lower school campus, and then also, potentially even looking at school calendar changes. Stemming from that were the walkthrough that Mr. Bidet had, and so we're making progress. I think just for the community to recognize, we hear the issue and the concerns. We feel some of it, and we're trying to find different solutions that are possible to address it. I think this is now the 4th meeting I've been at that we've discussed it and mentioned it, and we're going to start getting some data and potential solutions soon. And Don, I'll let you. We're on budget updates, and so we've gone through the temperature one.
We did an update on the auditorium wall and where that project was, the Placentino. I'm sorry, the James Keys came in and also talked about the roofing plans, right, and investigating solar. Did you talk about that?
Nope.
Okay. And let's see.
Is he talking about solar as far as across the district or just on the schools?
Down on the Woodland Street campuses as they redo, as we have the projects to redo the
So the
roofing
remaining
down there and getting a grant for.
Right. The remaining roofs is across Adams, Placentino, Miller that we didn't do. So what we did was around $800,000 or $900,000, just the shingle section. The remaining section is the rubber roof, flat roof. That is estimated to cost about $5 million to replace all of that roof. So there is some money, and there's, I guess, a $50 million roof sort of, or solar state bill that's going to go dribble. I mean, it's going to pay for very little once everyone asks for it, but we're going to look into options for whether putting solar on the roof, we can get someone to actually sort of pay for at least a good portion of that replacement to lower the cost of the town and potentially lower our electric costs. Yeah.
It's an incentive that by putting solar on, they will assist in the project to replace your roof as well. It's a roof and solar project combined. So
Because it's a good idea to have a new roof before.
Absolutely. No, I totally get that.
Because other than that, right now on the capital plan, the roof is it done in 5 years, or is it just out 5 years and it's going to be done over like 7 or 8 because it's...
No, it's sooner. It's James's plan is spring for the middle school, followed on by the next 2 years.
So he's broken the $5 million up into 3 years?
Yeah, I believe so.
I highly doubt we'll have the funds for that, but okay.
FinCom's got it. You were there.
I was, and I know we made promises on.
So we did the Placentino Miller roof, we did the high school auditorium wall update, that's gone out for the bidding. We're still working on getting bids back in two different...
There's two different potential solutions.
Right.
One is establishing, I don't want to say reestablishing, but establishing an appropriate flashing system that we talked about, pulling bricks out and praying the wall doesn't fall down, or running a cover over it, which we'd actually had a quote on a while ago of around $700,000. It's going to be a big number. There's no question about it. So we'll see what comes in. I mean, we're kind of have two wars in the water right now.
Have we gone out to bid though?
I don't know that. James is running that. I'm not throwing him under the bus or anything here. I honestly just don't know.
I thought he said the other day it was getting ready, but I didn't.
Okay,
I don't know if right now he has.
We can check it out.
Okay, I'll check with him.
We did the playgrounds, the air conditioning, also just a facility condition assessment where there's software to help better evaluate the lifespan of
School food.
right. Well, of
No, that's the name of the software.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Well, it doesn't really, it makes an assumption. I mean, it doesn't do things more than say that this should last 20 years. Whether it lasts 12 or 200, it's, you know.
It's a different sort of module for the software that the town is using on its side. And so now our facilities will be in it, and it'll make it easier.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to be in.
No,
I'm just saying I just want to make sure that it doesn't like do anything forensically to determine whether something's about to die. It just does it based on age. Right.
Assessment of lifespan and helping us with our list of replacements. Okay, that's about it. We will have another budget meeting before the October 19th meeting, but we don't have a date yet.
So office hours, obviously, you guys are going to talk
Can
about
I say
that.
something else though about office hours? I want to bring up one of the things for us to consider, and maybe before our communications meeting, like, do we want like topic-specific office hours or like, no? Okay.
Because people will never adhere to that.
Yeah, that's fine.
People want to come and talk about whatever they want to talk about. Okay. I mean, you can say, even when we do budget, which is what we normally do for office hours, they come for all sorts of stuff. I mean, you could pick a topic as a, like, I to draw.
Unless the people that we're going to do it, we're going to do a small presentation on something, which then...
So I guess this goes under the reports from subcommittee sections or the office hour sections, but I just want to sort of just revisit because we no longer have a subcommittee on school start times. And so it's sort of off all of our radar screen also because we are involved in so many other huge projects always and don't have time, but I just kind of want to put it back on everyone's radar screen. It's October, which means new families are at Miller and now new to experiencing what it's like to have that early start time. However, like Catherine, Minnie, and I had this committee with Keith last year, and we talked about it a lot, but like we just don't have ideas. Like Minnie and I can't do it. We can't make a better solution for school start times because I mean, maybe Minnie can, but like, I don't know what to do. So I'm wondering, I guess, like, I don't want to open up that subcommittee because we'll just have meetings and not have a better solution, you know what I mean? So, also, we don't have kids in Miller, so like, it's off my radar screen even more so. So my point is, there are folks in the community, maybe, that do want to work with us on this project, or even like take the lead on this project. Is that something we can like get feedback from the community? B, no one has a better idea. No one really wants to switch it back, and I don't think any of us want to switch it back. So it's going to continue to be a problem. If the only solution is our current model, how can we make it better for Miller parents, or at least assess how it's going? So are there things that we could do to help those families, such as more childcare in the afternoons, if that's a need, or, I don't know, more free breakfast at Miller because the kids don't have time to eat breakfast at home, or other things we can do within this time structure to help that. So, I guess I'm just saying, if anyone's still watching, that would be a great time these future office hours or beforehand to get in touch with us about being willing to offer some feedback or offer up some ideas.
So one thing I think that the school committee at the time promised, like, you could correct me if I'm wrong.
We will.
Would have been some sort of impact study about the change. Is that?
And then COVID happened.
And then COVID happened, absolutely.
But that is true.
But can we sort of try to work on that? And I get it. The data that we're having is still sort of somewhat impacted by COVID because we were testing data is a year in arrear. I mean there's a lot of stuff. But is there a way that we can sort of try to at least fulfill that promise to at least sort of take a look into the data and see what we can find? There was a recent post on Facebook. There were a lot of people that were there saying it's still it's really challenging. I definitely don't want to dismiss that. I would but we also need to look at the data because that sort of is what should drive all these decisions. And so we shouldn't ignore it. But I'd like to start. My personal suggestion would be that we start by trying to
impact study.
Do an impact study. Yeah.
And I would suggest that we do it focused, because sometimes what we do is that we kind of have a little overall when we send out surveys, we just kind of add other stuff.
No, I want to be very specific. Because I think there was a survey that had a couple questions about some of this, but wasn't specific. So Susan, Joni, Keith, is that something? I don't think we necessarily need to hire a consultant or anything for it, but let's see if we can find a way maybe to design something to send out and try to get some data, and then look at testing data. And
I think we should attach it to an existing survey rather than surveying people to death.
I know that prior to you doing that, whatever you call it, task force, Catherine had started working with me, and I forget who else. Was it you, Amanda? No, was it before that? Anyhow, there is somewhere an existing, some questions that had been started. I know we did done some iteration at one point, but it was too connected to COVID. I'll see if I can find the one that she had started to put together and see if you want to.
It was part of a much larger survey. I remember that, and there it wasn't. I don't think there was a lot of granularity and specifics to some of the questions, and I think we need to get into that a little bit more. Very detailed questions.
And I'm sure Dr. Savard would be willing to help us since she is like an academic.
An expert in this type of things. Yeah.
And knows many stuff.
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion? I think we need to know what the purpose of this is going to be. Like, I don't think we need, if we're not going to change the times back,
what are we doing?
What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are we trying to find out? Like, would
we know
be
it's us if you go to Miller.
Right. Would people be interested in free breakfast? I don't know. Like,
how do we mitigate for what
just be careful with the free breakfast thing. I'm sorry to interrupt here. Because it's a timing thing. If we have free breakfast at Miller, I got to bring the kids here sooner.
No, you don't. You don't. There are other things. I mean, like, don't the buses already have to arrive at 7:10, 7:15 just because that's when they need to start the...
And some of the buses don't get here at that time, so I'd have to move the buses earlier. That's the thing. Not all of them get here at 7:15.
But let's not get...
But us knows yet. Like, we're...
let's not... I don't want to get...
But Lisa, more than just a survey, the data I'm also interested in, and I understand that the pandemic is going to really challenge us with this, is there anything we can conclude from from testing data, because more than just the sort of impact is, is it hard to, are you finding it challenging to get your child up in the morning and get them to school?
We know
Are
the
they
answer, yeah, okay.
we know that,
It's almost 10 o'clock.
are they suffering from that?
Can I suggest we have this as an agenda item to discuss? Because rather than,
Yep.
I don't.
Just fine.
Yeah, okay.
But your point is taken, for sure.
Yep. Next meeting might be long, but we'll get it on within the next meeting or two.
Every meeting is long.
Right, no. We'll get it on within the next meeting or two. Because I definitely agree we should talk about it. Moving on, so I did load up to the file. I sort of put together some goals. Sarah sent some good suggestions. I don't know if you just want to take a period and review those.
I did review. Can I suggest an addition? Or
Yeah, no.
Thank you privately for
I
that.
don't think that I saw Sarah's. I had sent you guys.
No, Sarah sent them to me individually, and I kind
Okay,
of.
so the draft is everybody's.
Okay, because I'm just saying, like, I sent you guys a whole Google folder of just stuff that we had looked at before, that I shared with everyone, just to give you guys an understanding of things that we had done in the past.
Right.
Something to start from, because I feel like we're just starting from, there's no reason to start from nothing. So I had shared the Google, I just assembled what I had that I could find in my own files.
I didn't really see anything in there that really. I mean, I didn't watch the video.
There's a
but-
whole there was a survey that Ann Louise had done of us as school committee members.
More like, so, and this is where I wasn't sure what kind of goals we were looking at. Because I guess from my mind, if we're talking about school committee goals, they should also go along with the district. And so it felt a little premature. I put something together, but they were pretty general. I will acknowledge, like, more like, what does the school committee, what's our role? But I feel like if we are going to get a little more specific, which I think it would be nice to, it should complement.
No, I agree, and so I sort of took some.
And we haven't heard their goals yet.
Well, no, our goals aren't based upon their goals. Our goals should be aligned with the district strategic plan, so that which their goals will be aligned with as well, I assume. So anyway, so if we want to make do we want to review sort of what I did and make changes? Is that maybe helpful to have a sort of a starting place now?
Yeah.
And make additions, changes, suggestions, whatever?
Yeah, so can I just add a fifth starting goal?
Sure.
I think we need to include something about staying committed to DEI work.
Okay, that's a good one. I'm just going to add it. We're editing this.
Did you just share this? Because I did not see this before.
It's in the folder, yeah.
It's in the folder.
I uploaded it at 4 or something like that.
Okay. Can we make a goal that if we have stuff that needs to be in the folder, that is there well before we have a meeting, so that we can actually look at it? Because I didn't even see it.
We can make a goal that based upon our schedules and workloads and.
I understand, but like in the past, we had our school committee folder had to be out to us on a Friday afternoon for the upcoming next week on Thursday, so we had time to review over the information, so we would come prepared. That's all.
Okay, well,
So
I
for
was
me,
putting this together,
10
and I
minutes to 5
apologize.
is hard for me to look at
Then
it.
it's hard.
Again,
You have to wait until the next meeting if you have something you want to
Right,
add.
so again, it's not very long, but don't edit this, take these offline and make it your own and send it to me individually, so because we don't want to edit these things outside of the meeting. And just so everyone understands that the goals that I have in this document relate to, successfully negotiating collective bargaining agreements that we have coming up and increasing our communication with community stakeholders, and then doing a review, a deep dive maybe into our review of our policies, which Sarah, I thought that was a good suggestion that you had. Just making sure that there's a lot of stuff in there that hasn't been looked at for a while or that maybe we want to make some changes to. And then we just sort of met one of our goals, talking with Dr. Custer about sort of working with the administration to continue to strengthen and improve our SOI submission. So, and doing everything we can and being committed to the MSBA process. So anyway, take the next 2 weeks and.
Thank you.
Yep. Any more on that? Okay, so moving on, we've got the building facilities rental discussion at 10 o'clock, but it's important. Keith, do you have an update for us on, oh, no, that's, wait, sorry, I apologize, that's under new business, but we did get that letter from.
No, we did get that letter about another auditorium rental, and I know, is there a way, I wonder, I know that it's the folks that use the auditorium most that are the most hesitant to allow it to be used by outside folks, right?
Correct.
What if there was a way that the money that they're dying to give to us could be used specifically for performing and fine arts improvements, such as fixing the lights in the auditorium or things like that? Would they then be more likely to agree that, we can use this as a way to make money specifically for music and arts?
We're never going to raise $275,000, so.
Sure, but it could go to it.
But some of the issues are, they're already building sets. So those don't move. They will be there till the end of the play.
Like right now, yeah.
Like right now, exactly. So that's, the issue isn't necessarily about the usage, even though from an equipment standpoint, it is about the usage, which means they're going to have to hire staff at a significant increase in rate because people aren't going to want to necessarily give up a Saturday or Sunday to work it. We can't allow people to use our equipment. We spend way too much resources on it, and it's just, that's completely.
A kid do it?
I'm sorry?
A student do it? A trained high school Holliston student?
I don't know. I don't know if they would. I would need a lot of endorsements from the tech people now that they could use it.
Keith, could you put together a price, assuming the stage is free or for whatever the purpose is, that a weekend rental that left it in the same condition at the beginning of Saturday morning and Sunday night?
I would guess between $150 and $200 an hour.
But like for 48 hours or for like whatever the time they were using?
Whatever time they were using, a minimum of 6 hours.
That's reasonable.
It's because you have to hire custodial staff.
For the custodial staff, I'll need at least one, if not two custodians, depending on the number of people that are here.
Right.
And that's $35 an hour for each. Add to that probably on the order of $75 to $125 an hour to have technical staff in here.
Okay.
Plus the cost of the regular, of the space itself.
Right.
I don't think you could use a student just from a liability potential.
They're not an employee.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you reach out to the person who sent us that email and see what dates they're looking at?
I'll refer to the person who manages that for me, yes.
Okay, fine. That's,
So is there comparable data with that, like what the charges are for our surrounding schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have
I know what schools are, I know what organizations are paying other schools after Holliston has said no.
But again, why does that matter? If this is our price, this is our price.
Well, maybe our price is low.
Right.
Honestly, I did a whole study in another district as part of my KEGS, and I collected all building use. It's a lot of work that goes into it, but yeah, you can get all those comps over time, and I do think you might be low, the way he's describing.
Yeah, like that doesn't sound unreasonable. When you say $200 an hour, that's like, what? But then when you think about it, it's thousands of dollars that these folks pay for the weekend use.
And if things get broken or whatever, that's
And
not part of insurance isn't going to cover that. You have to
right.
think of those
But
things. Plumbing, all those things can happen when,
Normal wear and tear, yeah. But if we just think of get back, just I think and we don't want to set it at our cost either, because again, we want to try to.
Oh no, it's not at our cost.
Right.
So.
And they do some type of security deposit in the event that something is broken?
The biggest thing that we need is they have to have an insurance policy that would identify us as an additional insured, so that we can call upon their insurance for something that happens.
Well, if you could just work with your person and come up with something, and then we can discuss it. All right, great. Newsletter, you're working on that. So then the use of the committee in restrooms, I know we had a pilot.
We had a pilot.
How did that go?
We had a rough start, so I had to come in. And then I think they stayed later, so it kind of evened out the rough start from an hour's perspective.
Okay.
I came up with a ballpark figure, not really planning out too much, of $50 an hour, which they were fine with. Looking back, because we just got a recent pumping bill of $801 or $810 for a pump, I'm thinking that the $50 an hour may be light. Because again, I'm paying $35 an hour for the help already, and I put a small charge in there to cover that. For a singular event, sure, I guess, but when you think about that they were here, they had 7 different games. That's more than a week's worth of activity for us. Right. In some cases, especially in the fall, it's maybe more than a month's worth of activity. Right. 7 games.
Yeah, and I think we want to be trying to be welcome to the community, but I also don't want to just be guessing. I do think we need to get the data, right? We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we throw out a number and then we have to double or triple it when we get the real number. numbers.
And we pump usually twice a year before the season and at the end of the season. In the fall, in the spring, we usually don't have to pump, so. But again, we don't have that many events there, in all honesty. I mean, so.
Keith, I appreciate you being willing to look into this, period.
Yeah. So I guess are they going to use it this weekend as well?
Well, they were no, not this weekend. They didn't identify this as a date where they had home games.
Okay.
It's the following weekend. They have 8 games, and then there's 2 weeks where they have 1 game or something like that, which obviously they're not going to do it because I have a 6-hour minimum on my staff.
It's 1 hour. So do you need something from us just to sort of continue with the pilot and
I'm fine whichever way you want to head. I would recommend a higher number than $50 an hour than we did.
Do you think we can change the number on them now, or do we just sort of have one more event and then we set a sort of
They don't have reservations in for another event, so there is nothing to reserve. He agreed to do the first event, and then he was waiting for this meeting. Was the tone of his words. I don't remember the exact words.
So what, based upon the experience and sort of the cost, what you want us to sort of...
Can we collect some comps?
Yeah, I mean, what we need
You're not
to
going
do
to get
is
comps
say,
because
if you
nobody's a
pump the
tight tank.
septic
I know,
tank-
you know.
we're not going to get comps in time.
No, I'm saying if you pump the septic tank twice a year, that's $1,600. Okay.
The question is, do we have to pump it again?
Right, that's what when you use it more, we have to pump more. Probably.
Right.
Okay.
And our alarm goes off at 60%
How many
capacity.
home games through Holliston
We have 20 illuminations by policy.
do we open the bathrooms for us?
20 times, I would guess.
That's
So-
total through the year or just in fall?
No, it's for the year. We don't open it for practices. There's no other events we
There's
open it
20
for.
home games throughout the year?
The afternoon games. There's 20 night games.
Right,
Yeah, there's
then you
more.
Yeah,
have.
but we don't get
Soccer,
we get like almost
hockey.
we get almost nobody at an afternoon game though.
They're not open for those, though.
Yes.
Yeah, they will be. They will be.
Sorry,
yes.
okay.
Yeah. But again, the attendance of those is going to be.
No, the attendance was jamming
High
today.
school soccer game
High school,
today,
yeah.
bathrooms
What
open.
time?
Soccer,
Right after school.
4:15.
We need to have some sort of decision, I guess, today, if the school committee is going to vote on it and not sort of, or do we want to just vote to authorize Keith to set up a reasonable price for the next event, and then we'll come up with a policy sort of as we are able to collect more data?
Yes.
I think that makes the most sense.
Okay,
Is that reasonable for you?
that's fine.
Okay, so I'd entertain that motion.
Moved by Amanda.
Second by Dawn.
All in favor? You have the power for one day.
2 weeks.
But the motion expires in 48 hours.
Yes.
It's fine. I just better plan on meeting on Monday.
It's a holiday.
It's a holiday. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the meeting. The only thing I would say is I would recommend that I post us for 6 p.m. before town meeting. I don't see a real need for us to meet at this time.
And remind me that date?
That's the 16th. But I think it's better to have it and not need it than to not use it. Also, I think that we should just convene it and just then go into town meeting with an open meeting, so that way if we did need to deliberate on anything, we couldn't be shut down by the select board. Okay, is everyone good with that? And we'll all email out and we can change this. You can always move the start time sort of later.
Yeah.
So it may just be that we meet at 6:45, convene, adjourn to town meeting, and then forward. But I'm going to set it for 6 just in case anything comes up that we need to actually deliberate on. With that, our next regular meeting is October 9th. Sorry, actually, it says in the schedule our next. It says in our agenda that our next regular meeting is October 19th, and it is. But we are having a meeting on October 17th at 6 p.m.
And also October 16th at 6 p.m.
Yes, but the October 17th at 6 p.m. is to receive the presentation on the equity audit. I don't know if we've decided where exactly that's going to be. We have to kind of
I
gauge
presumed it was
interest.
going to be here, but I didn't, you know.
No, my question is it in here, or do we think that there's going to be enough interest that we would want to move to the auditorium? I think we'll just...
Yeah, I have no idea, to be honest with you. So I was initially presuming here, but I guess we could be, if you start hearing of large masses. maybe.
Okay, we'll let you, okay, we'll figure out, we'll get it posted, and we can always move it as long as we're within a couple days. So, so we have a meeting on the 16th before town meeting, we have a meeting on the 17th to review the equity audit and receive the presentation, and then we have a regular meeting on the 19th. Do we want to meet another time that week, just to...
No,
No.
okay, that's like,
Okay, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
move to adjourn.
Are we going to executive
No, we
session?
can't have executive session.
No, we are going to have
Yeah, we
a
are.
session tonight. A motion to adjourn to executive session from which we will not return to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. Open meeting law may be detrimental, have a detrimental effect on bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, which I do. That requires a roll call. So I need a motion. I need the...
Moved by Lisa.
Second.
Thank you. Sarah? Minnie?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Dan, yes. With that, we are adjourned for tonight. Thank you very much.